Chapter 28-35. The scene was grand enough. The giants were of different heights. The big ones might be thousands of meters tall, while the small ones were close to 1,000 meters tall. There were also the millions of rock soldiers. Each of them had an imposing aura, like rivers converging into an ocean. However, there weren't any holy armors like the ones Chen Zhao had seen before. Even the smallest of the giants was probably bigger than the Dragon Emperor. Size didn't represent power, but it still determined part of the difference in power. What did giants thousands of meters tall look like? Civil airplanes could only fly about 10,000 meters. If the tallest giants were outside, they could slap civil airplanes down with just their arms. Shilai Wenger and Drexak's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. Was this a god? Was this the power of a god? But what Chen Zhao really cared about was that the giants' bodies were alive. They weren't made of energy or rock. They were made of flesh and blood. In other words, they truly existed in this world. Or rather, they had once existed in this world. Titan. The legendary Titan. In Olympian mythology, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades had taken divine authority from their fathers, the Titans. Of course, they might not be. After all, there were many giants in Olympian mythology. The giants' bodies were alive, but they didn't have souls. Chen Zhao guessed that they were probably some kind of puppet made by Ares. This kind of spell wasn't rare in the spiritual world. It wasn't strange to make living people or powerful cultivators into puppets either. Losers. They're all losers, defeated by me. Now, they've become my soldiers, my weapons. You will become one of them. Chen Zhao wasn't surprised. As the son of Zeus, Ares was one of the 12 Olympians. At the same time, he was also the fourth generation of the Olympian gods. In the battle where the Olympian gods, led by Zeus, overthrew his father, Kronos, Ares was one of the main forces. So, it was understandable that he defeated some titans. Then, as your collection, how much of their power can they use? Chen Zhao asked casually. All of them. The strongest among them can even compete with me at my peak, and in my divine kingdom, they have all the power. When Chen Zhao heard Ares' words, he also caught the main point in his words. Divine Kingdom. When they were outside just now, Ares obviously didn't want to fight him. However, after entering the god's kingdom, Ares' confidence soared. He kept saying that he could not be defeated in the god's kingdom. Therefore, Chen Zhao became cautious. He wasn't sure what this divine kingdom could be used for. Back then, the Hercules was also defeated by me at his peak. Now, you are as weak as a bitch that has just given birth. Do you really think that you can defeat me with these soulless marionettes? Don't compare me to that demigod. I'm an over-god. Any arrogance you have will be torn to pieces in my divine kingdom. Here, Mr. Ares, he's trying to get information out of you. Shilai Wenger reminded. Chen Zhao turned around and glared at Shilai Wenger threateningly. Shilai Wenger felt goosebumps at Chen Zhao's threat. However, there was a clear distinction between them now. Anyway, Chen Zhao wouldn't let him have it easy, so he didn't need to hide their relationship. Humph. Hearing Shilai Wenger's name, Ares only snorted. He had the glory of a god, but he also knew that speaking too much was bound to make mistakes. Therefore, he didn't explain more to Chen Zhao. Just then, a small titan that was 1,000 meters tall charged over. Every time he took a step, the ground would shake violently. When he was 1,000 meters away from Chen Zhao, he leaped high and raised his fists above his head. Crimson light exploded from his fists. It was as if he was holding a sun. In the end, he had unstoppable power. He smashed toward Chen Zhao. Boom! Instantly, the ground rippled like a lake. A terrifying impact swept in all directions. Shi Lai Wenger immediately went to Drexak and helped him block the impact. However, everything around him disappeared in the impact. Shi Lai Wenger was speechless. This terrifying destructive power was simply unheard of. If this attack had landed in the city outside, this attack could probably destroy an entire street. It would probably only take a dozen rounds to destroy Los Angeles. But the next moment, the huge body of the Titan suddenly flipped over. Chen Zhao returned a punch to the 1,000-meter Titan. Shi Lai Wenger and Drexak were both dumbfounded. Wenger, you knew that guy was this strong. Shi Lai Wenger glanced at Drexak and didn't speak. However, his eyes had already said what he was thinking. Do I look like someone with water in my head? If I knew he was this terrifying, I wouldn't have provoked him no matter what. Even if he had a divine artifact in his hand. Chen Zhao was about to chase after him when a shadow suddenly enveloped him. A palm even larger than the 1,000-meter giant came crashing over. The largest Titan launched an attack at him. Chen Zhao turned his head and glanced at it. He raised his right palm, wanting to press it down. The largest Titan's palm was blocked in the air. Under Chen Zhao's control, Chen Zhao's small world formed a force that blocked the attack. At the same time, a dozen black balls formed in Chen Zhao's left palm. Pop, pop, pop. In an instant, the dozen black balls shot at the largest Titan at the same time. The largest Titan didn't dodge. He couldn't dodge either. His gigantic body gave him unparalleled destructive power. But it also turned him into a huge target. The moment the dozen or so black balls hit the largest Titan, they had already penetrated his skin. Each black ball had a mass of 10 million tons. Their huge mass made them almost unstoppable. Not even the legendary Titans could do it. The small black ball exploded after shooting into the body of the largest Titan. In an instant, a dozen blood flowers exploded on the largest Titan's body. Blood poured down like a torrential downpour. But if it were a normal person, it would definitely be fatal. However, the largest Titan was unmoved by this. He opened his huge mouth and a white beam of light shot at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao instantly raised his speed to the maximum. He turned into a ball of energy and dodged the white beam. At the same time, he went for the largest Titan's head. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the largest Titan's head was smashed by Chen Zhao. But the largest Titan still didn't fall. Its headless body continued to attack Chen Zhao. Chapter 28:36. Chen Zhao's eyes hardened and he pressed his palms down. In an instant, the surrounding Titans collapsed to the ground. Their bodies were crushed by the immense force. At this moment, the Rock Earth Legion was directly crushed into pieces. In Ares' divine kingdom, the only ones who had real combat power were himself and a dozen Titans. As for the Rocky Earth army, they looked imposing. In reality, they couldn't even get involved in this battle. For example, what was happening now? Before they could even touch Chen Zhao, half of them were smashed by Chen Zhao with a single slap. Even the smaller Titans were slapped down by Chen Zhao with a single slap. Only the largest Titans could barely exchange a few blows with Chen Zhao. But they could only exchange a few blows. But this wasn't what gave Chen Zhao a headache. What really gave Chen Zhao a headache was that the Titans' bodies couldn't be destroyed. No, it wasn't that they couldn't be destroyed. It was that no matter how Chen Zhao destroyed them, even if they were smashed into pieces, they could still recover. Was this the power of the Divine Kingdom? Recover their bodies. Ares, on the other hand, stood high above the clouds. He looked down at the battle below. It was as if he wasn't involved. The intense battle below seemed to have nothing to do with him. The more Chen Zhao thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. At the same time, Chen Zhao released his little world completely and enveloped the Titans. Chen Zhao repeated the same process again and again. Destroy the Titans, then they would be reborn. Destroy them again, then reborn again. This went on, as if there was no end to it. Again. The Titan that Chen Zhao had destroyed started to recover from its feet, then its body, then its head. Once again, he stood before Chen Zhao unscathed. Suddenly, Chen Zhao's eyes lit up. A myth popped up in his mind. It was a legend about Hercules, who had once been defeated by Chen Zhao. Hercules had once killed a god who was close to invincible. It was Antaeus, the child of the earth goddess Gaia and Poseidon. As long as he stood on the ground, he had endless power. Antaeus was a cruel ruler. He forced everyone who passed through his territory to fight him, and he killed them in the process. Until he met Hercules. Hercules lifted Antaeus high above his head so that he could not touch the ground, and then strangled Antaeus in mid-air. In Olympian mythology, Zeus is the main character because he is the final victor. The heroine in the Olympian myth was not Zeus's wife, Hera, nor any of Zeus's women, but Zeus's mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, great-grandmother. Gaia, the goddess of earth. Olympus was the beginning of everything. As the saying goes, the king of gods changes every day, but Gaia is eternal. One of Gaia's hobbies in life was to have sons and then have sons with sons. Gaia gave birth to the first god king, Uranus, who then became her husband. She gave birth to the 12 Titans with Uranus, as well as her youngest son, Cronus. After that, the second king of gods, Cronos, personally sent Uranus off. He also mentioned the curse that was overthrown by his son. After that, it was Hades, Poseidon, and Zeus's 3 brothers, Cronos. Gaia said that it did not matter who the god king was, as they were all her sons. Not only could she give birth, but all her children would definitely be at the top of the world. She could mate with anyone and was at the forefront of genetics. Basically, she could give birth to whoever had the strongest genes. Antaeus was the child she had with her son, grandson, and great-grandson, Poseidon. Of course, if Gaia could give birth, so could Zeus. Zeus was like a moving seeding machine. He was no weaker than Gaia in this aspect. For example, Ares, the god of war, was one. There was also an even more famous one, Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war. In any case, this household register was a negative course in ethics. Chen Zhao thought of Antaeus. As Gaia's son, he had the bloodline of the Titans. He could absorb endless power from the earth. In that case, the other Titans, who had purer bloodlines than Antaeus, shouldn't be any worse. Not to mention difficult moves like the impure earth reincarnation. It should also be possible to revive from a single cell. So, Chen Zhao suspected that these Titans could not be completely destroyed because of Ares' divine kingdom or because of their Titan bloodline. Chen Zhao pointed at the tallest Titan. Suddenly, he lifted his arm. The Titan's huge body suddenly rose into the sky. Ares' pupils constricted. A huge golden sword suddenly appeared in his hand. He shot it down from the clouds at Chen Zhao. The golden sword struck Chen Zhao's head like a bolt of lightning. But Chen Zhao was unharmed. He only raised his head calmly. Chen Zhao suddenly clenched his fist. The Titan that Chen Zhao had lifted up exploded into pieces. The scene was too horrifying. The Titans were already terrifyingly huge. When they turned into a ball, all their flesh and blood seemed to have been mixed together in a blender. The scene was enough to make anyone's head explode. This was how Shilai Wenger and Drexak felt at the moment. Fuck. Is this the guy you want me to deal with? Drexak clenched his teeth and stared at Shilai Wenger. Shilai Wenger was speechless. Indeed, It was too difficult for Drexak to deal with such a monster. The Titan's tens of millions of tons were compressed bit by bit. They became smaller and smaller, but also more and more terrifying. This did not seem to be enough to satisfy Qin Zhao's crazy actions. Qin Zhao's left hand grabbed the air again. Another giant Titan was lifted up and then approached the Titan's flesh that had been compressed into a ball. When the second Titan approached the flesh and blood ball, its body also seemed to be peeled off. His skin, tissues, and blood were all extracted and then absorbed by the flesh and blood ball. When the second Titan's body was completely absorbed into the flesh and blood ball, the flesh and blood did not grow bigger. The sphere of flesh and blood did not grow larger. Instead, it was compressed even smaller. Then the third, the fourth, imagine a dozen Titan giants that weighed millions to tens of millions of tons. Their bodies were forcefully compressed into a ball less than 10 meters in diameter. What would that look like? What would that look like? But Qin Zhao was clearly not satisfied. He continued compressing the flesh and blood ball. Finally, a black ball appeared in Qin Zhao's hand. This black ball was compressed from the flesh and blood of a dozen Titans. No matter what it was, once it was compressed like this, it would turn black. Even the air was the same, let alone other colors. The black ball's surface was extremely smooth, as if it was the most perfect ball. But it was also the most dangerous ball. Seeing the black ball in Qin Zhao's hand, Ares felt a chill run down his spine. Instinctively, he wanted to run. Chapter 28:37. The Titan, which had been compressed into a ball, did not recover. Qin Zhao raised his palm and aimed at Ares in the sky. The black ball in his palm was emitting a dangerous signal. Pop, the black ball shot through the sky. The black ball's flight path had already twisted the space around it. I can't stop it. Ares sensed the danger and immediately made a decision. Ares also reacted immediately. Thousands of Ares clones suddenly appeared in the sky. Every single one of them had an imposing manner and extraordinary might. The clones' auras were connected, as if they were one entity. When the black ball shot into the sky, it suddenly exploded into a ball of red. Instantly, the entire sky was dyed red. The entire world had turned the color of blood. The moment the black ball exploded, countless blood arrows shot out in all directions. Many of Ares' clones were hit by the arrows. And when they were hit, their bodies would explode. Boom! Oh! A drop of blood fell near Drexak. The moment it landed, it set off a terrifying impact of flames. Drexak was sent flying. The ground seemed to have melted. Large amounts of melted rock splattered on Drexak. Shilai Wenger had wanted to help Drexak block a few attacks. But the barrier he'd put up was instantly penetrated. Every drop of blood contained a terrifying power. With his power, he should be able to block a single blood arrow. But the key problem was that the blood arrows were too dense. Especially when he put up a shield, the area of attack also increased. As a result, he didn't dare to use a large-scale barrier at all. But if he didn't, a small-scale barrier would also mean that his defense wasn't good. As for Drexak, Shilai Wenger could only hope that he was lucky. While dodging, Shilai Wenger looked up at the battle in the sky. Shilai Wenger couldn't help but frown. Qin Zhao was terrifyingly powerful. But Ares didn't show what he should have. At least, to Shilai Wenger, Ares' power shouldn't be limited to this. Especially his thousands of doppelgangers. Every one of them looked unstoppable and majestic. But in reality, they only helped Ares share the damage. This made Shilai Wenger a little surprised. Ares summoned a dozen Titans to fight Qin Zhao. Although it was very powerful, this kind of power was only used against ordinary people. He did not display the kind of power and strength that he should have. Indeed, Chen Zhao was very powerful. But this was definitely not a reason for Ares to be crushed. Could it be that his strength had been weakened to such an extent? Ares had previously said that because of the curse, 2/3 of his divine power had been stolen. But Shi Lai Wenger felt that Ares had not even shown 1/3 of his strength. Of course, this was all his own speculation. Even he didn't know exactly how powerful a god should be. As the god of war, Ares should not be weaker than a mortal. He compressed the Titan's flesh into a neutron star. The neutron star contained more than just Titan flesh. And Chen Zhao's flame qi. Chen Zhao realized that during the compression process of the Titan's flesh, his fire qi had entered very smoothly. This also caused the neutron star to be more than 10 times more destructive than Chen Zhao had imagined. It wasn't just because of the Titan's flesh, but other types of flesh had the same effect. Perhaps other creatures' flesh would work too. But a neutron star with this kind of power was basically one of a kind. After all, no creature in the world could have a body as terrifying as the Titans. Not even the dragon race. So, Chen Zhao wanted to create one with such terrifying power again. It was almost impossible. There were fewer and fewer Ares clones in the sky. Chen Zhao finally found Ares' real body among the remaining clones. Actually, it was not difficult to find Ares' real body. The real body and clones' auras were almost one, so it was almost impossible to tell them apart just from their auras. But Ares' clones would not dodge the splattering blood arrows. Ares' real body, on the other hand, had to dodge. Of course, Ares wasn't stupid. He knew that he would be easily exposed. So, his clones also made some fake movements. Then, he would add more clones in an attempt to bluff his way through. But if the real body dodged too many times, it would become more conspicuous. Especially in Chen Zhao's small world. None of Ares' clones could escape Chen Zhao's senses. Just like how Chen Zhao knew that all his actions were under Ares' surveillance. Most of the time, both of them were in each other's senses. So, most of the small movements were meaningless. Found you. Chen Zhao suddenly launched an attack. He turned into a beam of energy and charged at Ares. Seeing that he could not dodge, Ares could only use his ultimate move. Ares raised his right arm. Human, you forced me to do this. Chen Zhao felt that Ares was going to use his ultimate move. But Chen Zhao did not care. He just wanted to take care of Ares. It did not matter whether it was his ultimate move or not. Plus, he did not know what Ares' ultimate move was. He could not be restrained just because Ares was going to use his ultimate move, right? Come, the strongest enemy. One figure suddenly appeared in front of Ares, then 2, and then 3. Chen Zhao could not help but stop in his tracks. He looked at the 3 figures before Ares in surprise. He was very familiar with their auras. The first was Mr. Jun Fong, the 1,000-year-old corpse Su Fu. The second was the old monster Kunlai. The one Chen Zhao had skinned alive. The third was Haber Timur Haber, the fake Dragon King. This is the power of my God Kingdom. Within my God Kingdom, your strongest enemies in the past will be reflected in front of you, Ares said in a cocky tone while gasping for breath. It seemed that it was not easy for him to use this move. He had only used it at the last moment. It must have cost him a lot. Using my defeated enemies from the past to fight against me. Aren't you dreaming? Chen Zhao sneered at Ares. They are not only your strong enemies from the past. They have no weaknesses or flaws now. Or rather, they are more perfect. My divine kingdom can make up for their flaws. Chen Zhao looked at the 3 strong enemies he had killed not long ago. The weakest among them was undoubtedly Haber Timur Haber. His upper limit was not high. Later, he received the ancient Dragon King's Dragon Ball legacy. But when Qin Zhao smacked him to death, he did not display the power that a real Dragon King should have. Next was the old monster Kunlai. He had unprecedented magical power but did not have the corresponding level. The strongest was undoubtedly Mr. Jun Fang. Whether it was in terms of cultivation or personal combat ability, he was a strong enemy that Qin Zhao had to face. Chapter 28:38. Qin Zhao rummaged through his spatial ring. He found a cigarette and took a deep puff. He hadn't smoked in a long time. When was the last time he smoked? He looked at the three powerful enemies in front of him. Qin Zhao didn't have any feelings for Haber Timur. To Qin Zhao, Haber Timur Haber wasn't a strong enemy at all. Old monster Kunlai couldn't be considered one either, even though his cultivation base was unparalleled. However, his battle prowess was inversely proportional to his cultivation base. Only Mr. Jun Fang had left a deep impression on him. This was a true opponent. Qin Zhao blew out a ring of smoke and tapped the ash. I didn't expect that we would meet again under such circumstances. I didn't expect it either, Jun Fang responded. Qin Zhao was stunned. He had just been muttering to himself emotionally. He knew that the three enemies in front of him were not their true bodies. It did not even contain their souls and consciousness. They were merely molded by some sort of force. Perhaps it came from Qin Zhao's heart or something else. In short, they were far from their original bodies. He didn't expect that Jun Bangsan would actually respond to him. He then looked at old monster Kunlai and Haber Timur Haber, but they did not have any reaction. Their eyes were dull and lifeless, without any luster. Only Mr. Jun had a faint smile on his face. I am the reflection of your heart, and I have cultivated a strange martial art called the heart-calling chant. In my early years, I had cultivated this art, but I had never understood its profoundness. The power of this art was mediocre, and my progress was incomparably slow. After cultivating for a month or so, I threw it to the back of my mind. I never thought that after I died, would be able to use this art to be reborn. Although this method of rebirth was beyond my expectations, this heart-calling chant can only be activated under certain conditions. So the current you is the real you? Yes and no. Mr. Jun Fang looked at his own body. Rather than calling it a heart-summoning technique, it's more accurate to say that it's a reconstruction of your true body. However, your soul is constructed from your heart, not your true self. Qin Zhao rubbed his forehead. What a headache. I really don't want to fight you again. Even though fighting again won't change the result, it still doesn't feel good. Hee hee. Although I'm still being controlled, I'm stronger than my real body. You might not be able to defeat me. Qin Zhao stretched his neck. Don't judge me based on your impression. I'm not who I used to be. Then let's have another round. Jun Fang was full of fighting spirit. Hee hee. The current you doesn't have the qualifications to fight with me. You're just someone else's puppet. It's not difficult to break free from his control. The difficult part is to maintain our current existence, Mr. Jun said helplessly. Actually, it doesn't matter whether I get rid of you or not. I'll kill you again, just like last time. Qin Zhao sounded relaxed, but he was actually more cautious than last time. Last time, he had used his ultimate move. This time, it was said that Mr. Jun Fang was even stronger than his main body. He was already familiar with most of his moves. Therefore, defeating him might not be as easy as last time. Ares didn't interrupt, nor did he interfere with the conversation between Qin Zhao and Mr. Jun Fang. He was just wondering why Mr. Jun Fang had consciousness. His divine kingdom could reflect the image of the enemy in his heart. But this didn't mean that the divine kingdom could create its own consciousness. To put it bluntly, the divine kingdom created a certain period of time in the past. It wasn't to recreate a person with consciousness. Even gods couldn't create a person out of thin air. Especially when it was a powerful enemy that even Chen Zhao had to be wary of. As for Mr. Jun Fong, Kunlai, and Haber Timur Haber, they might be stronger in combat, but they might not be much weaker than Ares in terms of cultivation. No matter how strong Ares was, he couldn't create someone as strong as him. But Mr. Jun Fong clearly had consciousness. This made Ares, the initiator of all this, a little confused. The conversation between Mr. Jun Fong and Chen Zhao was in Mandarin. As a result, Ares couldn't understand what they were talking about. Mr. Jun Fong didn't waste any time and directly used his ultimate move. Dark Spirit Chi circled around him. He wasn't any weaker than when he was at his peak. Chen Zhao took a puff and flicked the cigarette butt away. Purple Chi suddenly appeared on his body. Mr. Jun Fong raised an eyebrow. There seemed to be dark spirit Chi in Chen Zhao's purple Chi, but it didn't seem like it. It was hard to tell. Mr. Jun Fong had been immersed in dark spirit Chi for thousands of years. No one could compare to him in terms of understanding it. But he couldn't understand Chen Zhao's purple Chi. Your aura, do you remember how I killed your original body in the end? It wasn't a pleasant experience, but I remember. I devoured your original body, as well as your Yin spirit Chi. I was able to refine it and fuse it with my own magic power. The combination of the two resulted in the current violet Chi. I call this thing primordial Chi. It was Chen Zhao's first time fighting with primordial Chi. This also meant that Chen Zhao was serious. It wasn't that he couldn't beat Mr. Jun Fong without primordial Chi. It was a form of respect for him. At the end of the day, primordial Chi had benefited from Mr. Jun Fong's help. Although Mr. Jun Fong wasn't really willing to help Chen Zhao. Just then, Haber Timur Haber transformed into his real body. A 1,000-meter dragon appeared before Chen Zhao. He was also the first to attack. A huge magic formation appeared before Haber Timur Haber's mouth. Then, a ball of dragon breath shot toward Chen Zhao through the formation. Chen Zhao didn't dodge. He let the breath land on him. But the dragon breath didn't cause any damage or explosion. Instead, it seeped into Chen Zhao's body like water meeting a sponge. The next moment, the air seemed to be torn apart. There was a sharp, ear-piercing sound. Then, Haber Timur Haber's huge head was chopped off. Mr. Jun Fong's pupils constricted. Chen Zhao hadn't exaggerated before. In less than a month, Chen Zhao's power was completely different from last time. The primordial Chi on him only enhanced his speed and power. But this was where he was the strongest. With this enhancement, he became even more terrifying. Old monster Kunlai attacked at the same time. He reverted to his original form and charged at Chen Zhao with his mouth wide open. The surrounding air and spiritual Chi were first swallowed by the huge mouth. Only Chen Zhao stood where he was without moving. The more Kunlai's original body sucked, the bigger it became. In a moment, Kunlai's original body had grown to 10,000 meters. But now, he looked like an inflated pufferfish. A neutron star appeared in Chen Zhao's hand. He flicked it lightly. The neutron star was sent into Kunlai's huge mouth. Chapter 28:39. Instantly, Kunlai's body expanded rapidly. He had devoured large amounts of spiritual Chi. But with his figure, his body was still well proportioned and wouldn't deform too much. But after Chen Zhao's neutron star was sucked into his body, it released billions of tons of air. In an instant, Kunlai's body became round and bulging. His skin was also stretched taut, as if it would burst at any time. Chen Zhao also realized that he didn't know if Kunlai's power had increased. He wasn't sure if his weakness had really been made up for. But his intelligence had clearly decreased greatly. Intelligence wasn't enough to describe Kunlai anymore. Kunlai had the Kunpeng bloodline. But this bloodline didn't mean that he had the ability to devour everything in the world like the Kunpeng. At most, he had a better appetite. That was all. Even when Kunlai's intelligence was still up, he didn't dare to devour everything without restraint. Mr. Jun Fang's face darkened. These two unlucky kids. He had hoped that the two could work together. Even if they weren't as strong as him, they could at least hold them back for a while. At least when Mr. Jun Fang sensed Haber Timur Haber and Kunlai, their auras weren't weak. Their auras were not weak, and he thought that their standards should not be too far off. In the end, Haber Timur Haber was sent to the guillotine by Chen Zhao. Kunlai wasn't instantly killed by Chen Zhao. But he looked like he could explode at any moment. Mr. Jun Fang's heart skipped a beat. This unlucky kid, if you want to explode, hurry up. I don't even dare to get close to you like this. If Kunlai could speak now, he would definitely complain to Mr. Jun Fang. But it wasn't a matter of whether he would explode or not. It was a matter of when Chen Zhao wanted him to explode. This was the second ability that Chen Zhao's small world had developed after evolving. As long as it was a dead object, given a certain amount of time, his small world could seep into it. His small world was no longer limited to a large sphere. He could control it to seep into certain objects. It was close to perfect control. It wasn't controlled from the outside. If it was controlled from the outside, it would just be using the force field in the small world to manipulate people or objects like puppets. Infiltration, on the other hand, was another form of infiltration. Although it could not control living and conscious creatures, however, against units without life or consciousness, it had extremely powerful control. It was close to Chen Zhao's control over the small world. Unfortunately, Chen Zhao realized that Kunlai could be controlled by him. Especially when he took the initiative to swallow the neutron star. Neutron star was formed from Chen Zhao's small world. It contained Chen Zhao's energy. So, Chen Zhao easily controlled Kunlai. Chen Zhao glanced at Mr. Jun Fang. Jun Fang immediately had a wary expression. Chen Zhao was very difficult to deal with. After all, he had already lost to Chen Zhao once. Furthermore, he had paid the most painful price. This time, he was not truly resurrected. On the other hand, Chen Zhao was even stronger than when they first met. Hence, he had no choice but to be careful. Even if it wasn't for him this time. And he was just a puppet for someone else. But he wanted to win. Even if this victory did not belong to him. But Chen Zhao's gaze landed on Ares. Suddenly, Chen Zhao kicked Kunlai's stomach as if he was kicking a ball. Kunlai's huge body shot toward Ares. Oh no! Mr. Jun Fang exclaimed. Ares' scalp was numb too. He tried to control Kunlai. But he didn't know that he was too weak. Or that Chen Zhao was too strong. As a result, his control over Kunlai was useless. Kunlai's huge body smashed toward him like a hot knife through butter. Ares had no choice but to fight personally. Right now, he felt like he was going to vomit blood. Not only physically, but also psychologically. He was the one who had summoned Kunlai. But Kunlai had not done anything. Instead, he brought more trouble to him. Forcefully using his ultimate move had already made him even weaker. Now, he had to force himself to fight. Human, don't underestimate me. Ares roared. All of a sudden, the sky became bright and dazzling. Huge golden swords appeared in the clouds. The golden swords were all pointed at old monster Kunlai. Ares swung his arm down, and the golden swords rained down. But the swords could not even pierce through Kunlai's skin. Or perhaps Kunlai's momentum was too strong. Kunlai's huge body still smashed toward Ares unstoppably. Just as Kunlai was less than 1,000 meters away from Ares. As if deflated, Kunlai's body quickly shriveled. Both Ares and Mr. Junfang froze. The next moment, Mr. Junfang's expression changed drastically. "Dodge," he yelled. But Ares could not understand what Mr. Junfang was saying at all. He only saw Mr. Junfang roaring at him with a hideous face. This made him very unhappy, very unhappy. It seemed like he had to let him know who was the master. What Kunlai released wasn't air, but purple primordial chi. Instantly, the air was filled with purple gas. Then Ares realized something as well. At this time, his expression was one of shock and panic. His body could not keep up with his thoughts. Then, the primordial chi suddenly turned red. The air became scorching too. Shilai Wenger and the heavily injured Drexak, who were hiding from the flames of battle, were even more terrified. The terrifying heat made their breaths sting. The heat seeped into their noses and burned their lungs along their noses. That feeling was indescribable. Shilai Wenger was fine, but it was hard to say for Drexak. He could not block this kind of damage at all. Shilai Wenger was only protecting himself and giving him a little help. They were at the outermost part of the battlefield and it was already unbearable for them. Ares, who was at the center of the battlefield. The moment the primordial chi exploded, he suffered the first and strongest wave of impact. The heat wave caused Ares to instantly shed his skin. Even though Ares could change his skin as many times as he wanted, he was still able to change it. Ares could even shed and be reborn more than a dozen times in a second. But it was this powerful regenerative ability that caused him to suffer unprecedented pain. His skin evaporated in the heat wave. His flesh and blood were also evaporating. As a god of war, he could bear the pain of losing limbs. But at this moment, he groaned in pain. And this pain wasn't the end, it was just the beginning. The spreading flames suddenly seemed to be bound by something and started to shrink towards the center of the explosion. Chapter 2840. Seeing that Ares was imprisoned, Jun Bangsan immediately extended a helping hand. Jun Fong shouted, "9 nether flames." A bright blue flame ignited around Jun Bangsan's body. This 9 underworld flame was undoubtedly a type of Yin flame. It was the exact opposite of Qin Zhao's Yang fire. That was why Mr. Jun Fong dared to fight Qin Zhao at close range. Otherwise, the scorching air around Qin Zhao would have peeled off a layer of his skin. Moreover, the flames Qin Zhao ignited with immemorial qi were extremely effective against the yin qi on his body. Moreover, because he was born from dark qi, Mr. Jun Fong's dark qi couldn't affect him at all. With the protection of the 9 underworld flames, Jun Fong's courage was slightly boosted. At the very least, he wouldn't be completely defenseless. After all, Mr. Jun Fong had plundered the major sects 1,000 years ago. He had been invincible in China for decades. Naturally, there was no lack of means. It was also immune to most spells. Even though Qin Zhao was his greatest enemy, he didn't care. But it wasn't to the extent that he would be powerless to continue. All Things Collection. Jun Fong unleashed an attack at Qin Zhao from afar. The air in front of Jun Bangsan started to crystallize. Like solidified crystals, they kept spreading toward Qin Zhao. With one hand, Qin Zhao controlled the primordial chaos qi to gather again, trapping Ares tightly. At the same time, out of the corner of his eye, Seiji saw Jun Bangsan's attack. This was a spell he had never seen before. Chen Zhao hesitated. Should he take the attack head-on or retreat? Ever since Chen Zhao suffered a huge loss in China, he had been ambushed by a Mohan, who was far weaker than him. Chen Zhao's fighting style began to lean toward the conservative side. If he didn't know the spell, or if he couldn't determine the spell's function and effect in a short period of time, Chen Zhao wouldn't take it head-on like before. Finally, Chen Zhao decided to avoid the spell. Before the crystallization could touch Chen Zhao, he dodged the spell with a sidestep. The crystal spread to where Chen Zhao had been. Suddenly, countless monsters emerged from the crystal. They are not any kind of supernatural being known. Their appearances were strange, malevolent, and distorted. And they don't seem to be able to stay in the air for too long. In just a few seconds after they appeared, their bodies began to evaporate. Ares also took the opportunity to break free. The charred skin on his body began to quickly fade and was replaced by new skin. However, there was still fear on his face. Ares looked at Mr. Junfang. Junfang also glanced at Ares. They already had a certain level of tacit understanding. As the god of war, Ares was naturally experienced in battles. Junfang, on the other hand, had fought with countless powerhouses in the world. No matter what kind of battle it was, he knew it like the back of his hand. Therefore, this kind of tacit understanding was built on the rich experience of both parties. Both of them were analyzing the current situation in their minds. In a one-on-one fight, Chen Zhao had the absolute advantage. Ares was already injured, and after using his ultimate move, he was getting weaker and weaker. Therefore, a prolonged battle would only be disadvantageous to them. Jun Bangsan's advantage lay in his strange and never-changing spells. Chen Zhao was not in a hurry to decide the winner. One was Ares, the god of war, and the other was a 1,000-year-old demon. None of them could be fooled with a single slap. Of course, they also had their own weaknesses. Ares, needless to say, was weakening rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. On the other hand, Junfang had self-awareness. But he wasn't real. He was an existence that Ares' spell had imprinted in Chen Zhao's mind, neither alive nor dead. After killing Ares, the spell would naturally be removed. Therefore, if he wanted to defeat Chen Zhao, he had to ensure Ares' safety first. This also limited most of his combat ability. Therefore, in the current situation, Chen Zhao clearly had the upper hand. Both Ares and Junfang furrowed their brows. They could both feel the oppressive aura emanating from Chen Zhao. They knew that Chen Zhao hadn't gone all out yet. Even so, it was already hard for them to breathe. Even if the two of them worked together, they still couldn't defeat Chen Zhao's terror. Chen Zhao's gaze gradually calmed down. Ares and Junfang didn't let their guard down just because Chen Zhao's aura had calmed down. Instead, they became even more worried. They didn't know what Chen Zhao's next move would be. Chen Zhao's every move was unknown and unpredictable to them. This seemingly unintentional action made them even more worried. Suddenly, Ares' expression changed drastically. He wants to analyze my divine kingdom. We can't let him continue like this. Junfang was stunned. Analyze? How? He didn't understand how Chen Zhao did it. But Ares definitely wouldn't do it without a reason. Junfang didn't dare to let Chen Zhao be so relaxed. If he could really analyze Ares' divine kingdom, then their situation would be even more troublesome. Their chances of winning weren't high to begin with. If Chen Zhao controlled the divine kingdom, they would have no chance of winning anymore. Junfang quickly formed seals with his hands. Nether gate. Open. 5 metal gates surrounded by pitch-black yin qi suddenly appeared around Chen Zhao. The 5 black metal gates were engraved with hundreds of ghosts, all sinister and terrifying. The 5 metal gates were still spewing out extreme yin qi without stopping. The next moment, gelatinous things extended from the 5 nether gates. The gelatinous things wriggled forward like slime in video games. But they themselves were filled with inauspiciousness. The gelatinous things were already spreading toward Chen Zhao from 5 different angles. Chen Zhao didn't move. The flames on his body suddenly spread outward. Instantly, the gelatinous things were burned to ashes by the flames. Ares glanced at Junfang. Junfang's power was undeniable. Out of the 3 helpers that had been created by his magic, only Junfang was still alive and had actually helped him out quite a bit. But he couldn't understand Junfang's spell. Chen Zhao also glanced at the surrounding nether gates. Then he turned to Junfang. Junfang, you seem to be looking down on me with your spell. Or is there something I don't understand? Junfang looked at Chen Zhao. He continued maintaining the nether gates. Do you know the origin of spells? Isn't it just a treasure left by an ancient god? I'm not a Taoist and I don't know much about spells. Are you planning to discuss Tao with me? Ha! Mr. Chen, you're not a Taoist. Discussing Tao with you is just playing the lute to a cow. It wasn't that Junfang looked down on Chen Zhao, but their fields of knowledge were different, so they couldn't discuss Tao. Chen Zhao guessed that Mr. Junfang was talking to him like this because he wanted to stall for time. Or was she trying to distract him? Chapter 2841. Western magic comes from demons in hell. Of course, I'm talking about modern magic, not ancient magic. Eastern Taoism wasn't created by humans in the beginning either. As he spoke, Mr. Jun made a seal with his hands. It said that Taoism was passed down by immortals, but there are no immortals in the world. They're just too embarrassed to say it, so they use the name of immortals to package it and spread it to the world. Chen Zhao looked at Mr. Jun and glanced at the surrounding nether gates. Mr. Jun was clearly stalling for time. Chen Zhao naturally wouldn't let him do as he wished. The primordial chaos chi shot toward the nether gate. The nether gate was instantly destroyed, but the yin qi didn't dissipate. It reformed into a new nether gate. This nether gate is one of the first Taoism, Mr. Jun said. Do you know why the people back then hid the truth? Probably because the image of the person who taught them the Taoism needs to be improved. That's right. Mr. Jun laughed. The preachers' real bodies are hidden behind the nether gate. Do you want to see their real bodies? Can I say no? I'm afraid it's not up to you. Mr. Jun paused his hand seal. A tide of yin qi suddenly rushed out of the 5 nether gates around Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao didn't feel any aura directly. But the yin qi couldn't be faked. But then Chen Zhao laughed. What can you summon? Chen Zhao shrugged and said carelessly. At most, it's as strong as you. Even if there's another opponent like you, it won't change the outcome. Mr. Jun didn't retort. Chen Zhao was telling the truth. If the conditions allowed, a normal person could summon a terrifying creature many times stronger than them. But the stronger the summoner and the stronger the target, the harsher the conditions to summon them. At Mr. Jun's level, he was already a big boss in other people's eyes. If he wanted to summon something stronger than him, it would be as difficult as destroying the world. He didn't even have an offering now. Why would someone come all the way here to be his fighter? Mr. Jun also looked at Chen Zhao calmly. Indeed. Even if I summon someone as strong as me, it won't change the current situation. You seem a bit too strong. Jun Bangsan's words were incredibly honest. This surprised Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao had thought that he would argue a little. Or he could use other ways to confuse himself. She didn't expect Junfang to be so calm. He was so calm that Chen Zhao even wondered if he had other motives. Suddenly, the yin qi wrapped around Chen Zhao's body. Chen Zhao frowned and casually dispersed the yin qi. But just then, the 5 nether gates were a few meters closer to him. Feeling that something was off, Chen Zhao immediately left the range of the nether gate. But the nether gate was actually moving with him. Moreover, it could keep up with his speed. The 5 nether gates spat out more and more dense yin qi. Seal. Chen Zhao guessed as he tried to get rid of the 5 nether gates. No matter how fast Chen Zhao increased his speed, he could not escape from the nether gate's pincer attack. Both Aries and Jun Fong had rather grim expressions on their faces. Chen Zhao was simply too fast. He was so fast that they couldn't even catch his movements with the naked eye. With such speed, they wouldn't even be able to fight back. Finally, the 5 nether gates were right next to Chen Zhao. The next instant, the yin qi completely enveloped Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao could feel a force tearing at him. He was no stranger to this. Now, he finally understood. The spell wasn't a summon, but an exile. Chen Zhao suddenly disappeared before everyone's eyes. Aries didn't expect Jun Fong to defeat Chen Zhao. It didn't matter what method Jun Fong had used. But the result was obvious to all. In any case, he won. This was an indisputable fact. Aries looked towards Kanchuru-san. He was a bit hesitant. Should he keep Jun Fong as his servant? However, Mr. Jun Fong was so strong, and he had an endless stream of strange spells. There was a chance that he could turn the tables. Although he had the right to decide Jun Fong's life and death, some masters always had a way to turn the tables. Jun Fong didn't seem like someone who could be easily controlled. Aries had already been betrayed once, so he didn't rush to make a decision. But now, he realized that Jun Fong's expression didn't improve. Instead, it became even more serious. But at this time, he discovered that Mr. Jun Fong's expression did not improve. Instead, it became even more serious. More accurately, he noticed it, but his attention wasn't on Aries. To be precise, he sensed it, but his attention was not on Aries. More accurately, he noticed it, but his attention wasn't on Aries. Jun Fong's gaze was focused on the spot where Chen Zhao had disappeared. Aries wanted to communicate with Jun Fong, but they couldn't speak. He could only stare. Aries could only look at Shilai Wenger and Drexak. Shilai Wenger felt Aries' gaze and looked at Mr. Jun Fong. He seemed to have sensed Aries' intention. Shilai Wenger glanced at Aries and shook his head. I don't know either. Mr. Jun Fong glanced at Shilai Wenger and shook his head. I don't know. What did he mean by, you don't know either? Of course, it was the terrifying power that Jun Fong had displayed earlier. Shilai Wenger didn't dare to yell at Jun Fong. Shilai Wenger didn't dare to shout at Mr. Jun Fong. Everyone couldn't help but look up. Everyone couldn't help but raise their heads to look at the sky. A red crack appeared in the sky. That red crack gave off an ominous feeling at first glance. Then, something seeped out of the crack. Blood. It was red blood. Blood was seeping out of the crack. Then, there was another boom. Another crack appeared in the sky. Everyone felt like their scalps were going to explode. What was going on? What happened? Only Jun Fong's expression grew more and more serious. He clearly knew what had happened. Or rather, he had guessed that this would happen. Boom, boom, another 2 loud bangs rang out in succession. The sound seemed to be pounding on everyone's heart. Entering someone else's heart wasn't something they wanted to see. They didn't want to accept it either. But the sound and scene were too frightening. The sky seemed to be bleeding. Just then, the crack finally turned into a hole. Then, blood gushed out like a flood. A puddle of blood soon formed where everyone was. In this pool of blood, there were some pieces of flesh of unknown locations floating around. It was the flesh of some giant creature. Just then, there was another explosion of blood from the crack in the sky. A giant red object fell from the sky and landed right in the middle of the puddle. It was a head, an incomparably huge head. The head only had one eye, but this eye took up 70 to 80% of the face area of the head. Chapter 2842. There was a terrifying hole on the side of the one-eyed head, as if it had been caused by the impact of a meteorite. The one-eyed head was killed by this blow. And this blow not only opened a hole in its head, but also cut off its connection with its neck. At this time, the one-eyed head's single eye began to fill with blood. Finally, a huge eyeball rolled out. The diameter of this eyeball was probably 800 or 900 meters, not much smaller than the head. The eyeball was covered with a layer of spiritual substance made of yin qi, which protected the eyeball like armor. This thing is still alive. This thought popped up in everyone's mind. Although this thing only had one eyeball left, its aura was still so strong that it made people's hair stand on end. The eyeball moved slowly and swept across everyone present. Aries frowned and clenched his fists quietly. Mr. Junfeng also frowned and looked serious. What's going on with it? What is it? Aries asked. Shi Lai Wenger, on the other hand, translated for Aries in a gentler way after some modification. I don't know, Mr. Junfeng said calmly. What do you mean you don't know? Is this the side effect of your spell? The origin of Tao in the East came from a group of unknown beings, which is also the origin of immortals. Many biographies and legends of Taoist priests seeking immortals recorded in ancient books are related to these things. Immortals are the identities given to them by human beings. The most famous story is that King Mu of Zhou went west to Kunlun to find the Queen Mother of the West for the elixir of immortality. There are many such stories in Huaxia, but the truth is far less beautiful than what is described in the stories. Mr. Junfeng said, this is the essence of Tao. Humans are born with Tao bodies and have endless possibilities, so their talent is far beyond that of other species. After they have grasped the essence of Tao, they have usurped the master. The way to seek Tao is controlled by them and eventually sealed. Later generations can only hear the stories of their predecessors but don't know the truth. Shi Lai Wenger did not translate Mr. Junfeng's words to Aries at the same time. Instead, he asked his own question, in other words, this thing is the Tao itself. The immortal world that Taoists speak of is actually a different world. This different world is not composed of a single world, but of countless different worlds. Even the ancients had never truly come into contact with all of them, and what they had come into contact with was only a very small part. After the ancients mastered a part of the Tao, they thought that they had completely mastered the Tao, so they closed the way of contact. However, there was still a small group of ancients who still maintained this way of contact, but they were not accepted by those who claimed to be righteous, so they were called devil. This is also where the way of diabolism came from, and what I inherited is precisely the way of diabolism. The place I exiled that person to was an unknown place among the many different worlds, and I also don't know what exists in that unknown place. Shi Lai Wenger looked at the huge eyeball in front of him. He's the demon. You can also be an immortal. Immortals and demons are one. Since they are the beginning of Tao, then their strength, I don't know how strong they are. I have communicated with them a few times and discussed Tao with them, so I have a preliminary impression of them. They don't have a clear concept of right and wrong, good and evil, or rather, we humans define good and evil by ourselves, and it has nothing to do with them. Some of them are individually strong, and some are weak, but not all of them are high and mighty. Some are very intelligent, even beyond the scope of human understanding, and some have low intelligence. Although they bear the Tao, they don't know what it is. Mr. Jun Fong continued, I don't know how strong the immortal world that I exiled that person to is. If there is a supreme existence there, then that person will die without a doubt. Even if he doesn't die, it will be difficult for him to escape the cage of the immortal world. If that immortal world is not strong, Mr. Jun Fong said no more, and the result was already presented to everyone. Suddenly, the crack in the sky once again poured down like a flood, and a monstrous wave of blood rushed out. In the wave of blood, a figure descended from the sky. It was a figure bathed in blood, a figure that could not be ignored even in the monstrous wave of blood. When everyone looked at that person, their gazes were filled with horror. Everyone felt that it was difficult to breathe. The person was the exiled Qin Zhao. At the moment, he was completely different from before. Qin Zhao's murderous aura seemed to materialize, painting a horrifying scene behind him. Everyone seemed to receive some kind of message in their minds, and a scene of Azura appeared in their minds. Qin Zhao was massacring wantonly in a barren land. A few powerful creatures were fighting and killing this figure. The original body of the eyeball was one of them. The entire process did not last long, only a few seconds. The eyeball used its single eye to shatter the void, trying to escape into it. However, Qin Zhao, who followed closely behind, smashed its head away. The head smashed through the unstable space and fell into Ares' divine kingdom. At the moment, Qin Zhao was like the messenger of the apocalypse in everyone's eyes. He had destroyed all the powerful existences and almost half of the creatures in that world. In just a few minutes, he had made that strange world disappear. He had come from the unknown, brought disaster, and left in the unknown, leaving behind a remnant of the world. Jun Fong's pupils constricted. He saw a familiar figure in the illusions that appeared in his mind. He had once communicated with that existence through his mind. Mr. Jun Fong had even respected that supreme existence as his master. This was also the first time he had seen the true body of that supreme existence. Although he had seen it through an illusion, that scene was undeniably real. It had really happened just a few minutes ago. It was not just an illusion. It was that world's final wail. Mr. Jun Fong did not expect that he would bring such a disaster to that world. He had destroyed a world. Although it was a very small world, there were countless creatures in it. In just a few minutes, Qin Zhao had truly let go of his destruction and destruction. It was not an exaggeration to say that the world had been plunged into misery and suffering. Although it had only been a few minutes, Qin Zhao had discovered something. It was a small world, a naturally formed small world. However, this naturally formed small world was filled with marks similar to Qin Zhao's small world. The final product of the small world, the small world. When Qin Zhao had entered the small world, he had already felt that it was unusual. When Qin Zhao had tried to explore deeper mysteries of the small world had launched a counterattack against him, as if it wanted to eliminate an outsider like him. The result was naturally Qin Zhao's massacre. Chapter 28:43. Qin Zhao was a bit confused. Why did that world reject him so much? Even Qin Zhao himself could feel the malice from the entire world. As a result, the moment Qin Zhao was banished to that world, he'd been rejected for no reason. Qin Zhao couldn't understand, so when he was attacked, his counterattack was especially fierce and cruel. That world wasn't big, but it wasn't small either. Actually, he wouldn't go so far as to destroy Earth. Qin Zhao really hadn't reached that stage. If Qin Zhao didn't eat or drink for 100 years, he could probably destroy all the disasters on the surface. But Earth was still Earth. It would still spin. However, if the goal was to destroy the entire human race, there was still hope as long as there were no existences at the level of Zhang Tianyi in the way, and humans didn't bring out any technology that defied common sense. As for that small world, it was even simpler. Chen Zhao just used a great collision and destroyed half of the living beings in the small world. Originally, Chen Zhao had to go through hell to return to the modern world. But coincidentally, there was a powerful being proficient in spatial magic in that small world. Chen Zhao hitchhiked and returned to the Divine Kingdom. Slaughtering half of the living beings in the small world filled Chen Zhao with murderous intent. He was like a demon descending into the world. Even a god like Ares, who'd been baptized by countless battles. They were all terrified by Chen Zhao's murderous intent. He and Mr. Jun Fong both knew why Chen Zhao's unusual murderous intent was. But Shi Lai Wenger and Drexak didn't know. They were affected by Chen Zhao's murderous intent and saw an illusion that wasn't real. All they saw was the most bloody and cruel scene. It wasn't as simple as a charade. It was blood covering the scorched earth and burning corpses. "Leave here. I'll stop him." Mr. Jun Fong's tone was filled with the generosity of facing death. Of course, Mr. Jun Fong wasn't a righteous person. He just wanted to use this opportunity to compete with Chen Zhao. More accurately, he wanted to test Chen Zhao's level. Whether Ares and the others stayed or not didn't affect the overall situation much. Actually, Mr. Jun Fong didn't expect to defeat Chen Zhao in battle anymore. The victory he wanted now was for Ares to escape. If Ares escaped, he would win. Although this kind of spiritual victory was rather helpless. But at this moment, Jun Fong only had this one kind of hope. However, as Ares and Mr. Jun Fong's translator, Shi Lai Wenger didn't translate for Mr. Jun Fong. Right now, Shi Lai Wenger was affected by Chen Zhao's murderous aura. He had fallen into a bloody illusion created by the murderous aura. Jun Fong glanced at Ares. Right now, Ares was in a worse state. Of course, the injuries on his body were an important reason. Another important reason was Chen Zhao's murderous intent. Chen Zhao's murderous aura gave them great pressure. This kind of pressure had already produced a substantial effect. Even Ares and Mr. Jun Fong were unable to unleash their full power. Chen Zhao did not continue attacking, nor did he end the battle immediately. Chen Zhao had gained a lot in the small world. In fact, it could be said that he had gained a lot. Chen Zhao vaguely found the evolution path of his small world. However, this feeling was not very clear. He felt that the Divine Kingdom might be able to give him more inspiration. But Chen Zhao soon discovered the secret of the Divine Kingdom. A Divine Kingdom was not more advanced than a lesser world. More accurately, the two should be of the same level or about the same level of power. The Divine Kingdom and lesser world should be two completely different forms of power. Moreover, Chen Zhao discovered that there was a power in the Divine Kingdom that he could not understand or analyze. This power was the foundation of the Divine Kingdom. The Divine Kingdom was also supported by this power. Chen Zhao was confused. This power was very unfamiliar. It should be an energy form that was hard to detect. But it was very obvious in the Divine Kingdom. Chen Zhao thought of a power, divine power. Chen Zhao, Zhang Tianyi, Bifla, and the 23rd Blood Mary had discussed this before. This power was too difficult to understand. Even now, Chen Zhao could infiltrate the Divine Kingdom through the lesser world. Through the lesser world, he could analyze the general structure of the Divine Kingdom. But Chen Zhao had no clue about the power that supported the Divine Kingdom. Chen Zhao thought that this power was divine power, but that was just his guess. This should be the secret of the Olympian gods. This made Chen Zhao even more determined to capture Ares alive. If he couldn't analyze it himself, then he would find the most intelligent and powerful people in the world. Chen Zhao didn't believe that they couldn't analyze it together. Chen Zhao glanced at Mr. Junfang. He didn't know if it was an illusion. At the moment, Mr. Junfang's aura seemed much weaker. When he looked at Aries, he was even weaker. Chen Zhao raised his arms above his head. Everyone's hair stood on end. Clearly, Chen Zhao didn't plan on delaying anymore. Chen Zhao stretched out his 10 fingers as if he was pulling an invisible curtain. No one understood what Chen Zhao was doing. He could attack, but why did he use such a strange move? Just as everyone was confused, Chen Zhao suddenly pulled down with force. In an instant, everything in the Divine Kingdom was torn apart by Chen Zhao. Mountains broke, rivers stopped flowing, everything was distorted by Chen Zhao's pulling. Aries spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed to the ground powerlessly. Chen Zhao had torn his Divine Kingdom apart like a rag. The Divine Kingdom wouldn't be destroyed just like that. But Aries was suffering from the backlash. The Divine Kingdom was one with him. If the Divine Kingdom was attacked, it was the same as him being attacked. Aries' Divine Kingdom was extremely vast. It was hundreds of times larger than Chen Zhao's small world. Under normal circumstances, Chen Zhao wouldn't be able to cause such earth-shattering damage. But Chen Zhao's small world had seeped into Aries' Divine Kingdom. It was like a virus invading a program. The virus might only be 1% or 1,000th of the program, or even smaller, but it could control the program. The program didn't need to be large. It just needed to be thoroughly infiltrated. That was why Chen Zhao could flip the entire Divine Kingdom like he was tearing apart a curtain. Mr. Junfang's figure gradually faded and then disappeared completely. Drexak died on the spot. Faced with such an apocalyptic scene, Drexak wasn't strong enough to protect himself at all. When it happened, Shilai Wenger only glanced at Drexak indifferently. Then he only cared about protecting himself. He couldn't protect Drexak. The only thing he could do was protect himself. Chapter 2844. Chen Zhao mentioned Aries. Glancing at Shilai Wenger, he was about to give him the final blow. Shilai Wenger yelled, "You can't kill me. You can't kill me." "Oh. Why?" "Because you're old. Since you want to study Aries, you can't kill me." "Why?" "You're his grandfather and grandson. He's cursed right now. Only I can remove it. If you kill me, the curse will drain his divine power and he'll become a normal person. He'll lose his value to you too." Shilai Wenger had foreseen this outcome. Therefore, this excuse was prepared a long time ago. As expected, Chen Zhao retracted his murderous intent. The Holy Kingdom gradually dissipated and returned to the modern world. Chen Zhao took out his phone and dialed. "Old Zhang, I caught a god. It's the Olympian god of war, Aries." Pooh! Zhang Tianyi, who was having dinner, spat out his food. "Are you kidding me? The god of war, Aries? That's a legendary god. You're not kidding, right?" "No. I'm holding him right now. I found something that might be useful to us." Chen Zhao opened the video call and pointed it at Aries in his hand. "That's him. He looks a bit ordinary. You didn't find someone to fool me, did you? Believe it or not. Anyway, I've already notified you. Are you coming or not?" "Of course, why not?" Chen Zhao's words were too shocking. But Chen Zhao's actions had always been this shocking. Studying a god. Moreover, it was a god with a name. To any cultivator, this was extremely attractive. Zhang Tianyi couldn't resist this temptation either. Then, Chen Zhao contacted Bifla and 23rd Blood Mary. Then, Zhang Tianyi, Bifla, and 23rd Blood Mary contacted Chen Zhao and many others. They confirmed that they would come to Los Angeles tomorrow to find Chen Zhao. In fact, Bifla had already boarded a private plane. When Chen Zhao hung up, the plane had already left. 23rd Blood Mary was ready to leave too. Zhang Tianyi was the only one who couldn't do anything. Although he had a large family business, he really couldn't get a private plane. At most, they would take a chartered plane, and it would be a small passenger plane. Shi Lai Wenger followed Chen Zhao obediently. He had no intention of escaping at all. Shi Lai Wenger was not stupid at all. Run. Stop joking. Is it not good to be alive? In the past, he still held on to his identity and felt that it was barely enough for him to be ranked among the top. However, after witnessing Chen Zhao's abilities, he didn't know what to do. He gave up on the idea. He didn't know who Chen Zhao was. But Chen Zhao was definitely at the top. If the other top experts were at his level, then he should just wash up and sleep. What peerless peak! It was all an illusion. Squashing him to death was no different from squashing an ant. Shi Lai Wenger was able to live a long life, not because of how strong he was. It was because he had always been rational. At least most of the time, he wouldn't put himself in danger. Letting Drexak steal Chen Zhao's stuff was probably the stupidest decision he'd ever made in his life. He was so stupid that Shi Lai Wenger wanted to slap himself. He was so stupid, Chen Zhao didn't kill Shi Lai Wenger. However, after he left the Divine Kingdom, he casually razed his farm and his house to the ground. Chen Zhao stood on the ruins of the farm, still holding the unconscious Ares in his hand. Chen Zhao hesitated. How would Ares arrange it? Lock him up in the supernatural organization's headquarters? Not to mention whether the people of the supernatural organization would betray him because of Ares' identity. Even the combined combat power of the supernatural organization couldn't defeat Ares with one hand. Even if Ares was in an extremely weak state. If he wanted to cause trouble, the supernatural organization wouldn't be able to deal with it. So, Ares definitely couldn't be placed in the headquarters. But he definitely couldn't stay at home. It was fine for Chen Zhao to spontaneously combust at home. But the key problem was that Chen Zhao couldn't stay at home all the time. Plus, there were so many kids at home. In the family, he was the only one who could control Ares. If he wasn't here, Ares would have struggled a little. Chen Zhao's entire household probably wouldn't be enough for Ares to tear him apart. So, he couldn't stay at home either. After thinking for a long time, Chen Zhao still couldn't make a decision. Just then, Chen Zhao's phone rang. Mr. Chen, are you having a headache about how to deal with Ares? Shi Lai Wenger asked. Chen Zhao turned his head and glanced at Shi Lai Wenger. What suggestions do you have? First, find a remote area. Then, put a strong seal on him. Find a remote area. The first place he thought of was Mysterious Island. That was his territory. If anything happened, he would be the first to know. Secondly, it was remote enough. There were some construction teams on Mysterious Island. Also, the marine biology lab under his name was on Mysterious Island. It wouldn't be hard for him to give some instructions to cover it up. But how should he do the seal? Chen Zhao was a pure battle type. He wasn't afraid of anyone in terms of combat power. But when it came to seals, he was a Pacific Ocean away from experts. Compared to the best, he was a solar system away. Even if he had the strongest sealing spell in front of him, he wouldn't be able to learn it in a short time. So you know how to seal? I'm proficient, Shi Lai Wenger said modestly. Can you seal this guy? Chen Zhao asked. 3 days, Shi Lai Wenger said after a moment of hesitation. 3 days. 3 days was enough. The 3 guys would arrive tomorrow. So, Chen Zhao would let them deal with these headache-inducing things. Chen Zhao still decided to accept Shilai Wenger's suggestion. I'll seal Aries first. 3 days it was then. When Zhang Tianyi, Bifla, and 23rd Gen arrived. Then, he would fish him out and put a new set of seals on him. With their abilities, it wouldn't be a problem for them to seal Aries until the seas ran dry and the rocks crumbled. Of course, no one could guarantee the success of a seal. After all, Chen Zhao had seen many strong opponents. All of them were said to be permanently sealed. In the end, they just spent the winter in a coffin and then came out to cause trouble. After all, most of the people who created these sealing spells hadn't been sealed before. They hadn't been sealed for hundreds or thousands of years. Therefore, those seals were more of a conclusion based on deduction. But these deductions weren't 100% accurate. Deductions were like pie. The longer it took, the more complicated it was and the more mistakes it would make. So, in the final deduced seal, if the person was lucky, would die in the coffin first. If one was unlucky, the seal would fail, and the person who was sealed would come out alive and kicking to show off their skills. Chapter 28:45. Isaac, are you on Mystical Island now? Yes, boss. What's up? Isaac immediately perked up. Ever since Chen Zhao recruited him to manage the Marine Biology Research Institute, he didn't bother with him anymore. Apart from giving him funding regularly, there wasn't any other communication. Ezekiel was rather disappointed. He never worked hard to become a researcher. All of his efforts were for the sake of success and recognition. Chen Zhao was clearly someone worthy of his investment. Of course, he didn't invest in money. Instead, he invested in his time and loyalty. Recently, he'd been in charge of researching the creatures and ecosystem on Mystical Island. He'd already achieved some results. Inform the researchers in the institute that there's a strong earthquake in the nearby sea. It might cause a large tsunami, so tell them to evacuate Mystical Island immediately. Strong earthquake. Tsunami. Isaac was a little surprised. He hadn't received any relevant notification. When did it happen? Most islands and offshore areas were monitored for earthquakes and tsunamis. Once there was an earthquake in the nearby sea, a regional notification would be sent immediately. But now, the Earthquake Bureau hadn't notified him. Instead, it was Chen Zhao. Isaac hesitated. He didn't know if he should listen to Chen Zhao. What if the earthquake didn't come? It might be the Marine Biology Research Institute. It seemed like 1 or 2 days of delay was fine. In fact, it was more important. Some equipment couldn't be stopped. And for some ongoing experiments, if the people left, it might cause the experiment to fail. Normally, it would cost tens of thousands of dollars a day to maintain. But if the people left, it would be a loss of tens of millions of dollars a day. I'm planning to increase the institute's funding. Also, I'll increase your pay. Chen Zhao quite liked Isaac's style of doing things. He put profit above everything else. Some things didn't need to be said clearly. He just had to say it clearly. Isaac heard Chen Zhao's words. He immediately reacted. It didn't matter if there was a tsunami. Chen Zhao wanted him and the researchers to evacuate Mystical Island. It didn't matter what Chen Zhao's goal was. Anyway, he just had to do it. Boss, we have enough funding now. It's fine. We'll do the research and buy the equipment. The rest of the money will be used to subsidize your living expenses. Isaac was speechless. Chen Zhao almost said, I'll give you the money directly if you cooperate. Boss, I'll inform them immediately. By the way, do you need me to inform the construction team on the island? Since Chen Zhao wanted to clear the place, it couldn't just be people from the research institute. I know the boss of the construction team, Chen Zhao said. I'll inform him myself. The construction team and the research institute were not the same company. How could the construction team listen to Isaac? So, Chen Zhao contacted Felwood directly. Felwood Sco's reply was more decisive than Isaac's. Felwood Scott served Chen Zhao wholeheartedly. He was Chen Zhao's breadwinner. Plus, he wasn't an idiot. Chen Zhao had told him that there would be a tsunami. Regardless of whether Chen Zhao was telling the truth or not, he couldn't ignore it. In 3 hours, the thousands of people on the mystical island had all been evacuated. This efficiency could not be said to be slow. It was probably even more efficient than the American army. After confirming that everyone on the island had left, Chen Zhao landed on the island with Ares. Shi Lai Wenger naturally followed behind Chen Zhao. What materials do you need? Chen Zhao asked. Blood, a lot, Shi Lai Wenger said. Shi Lai Wenger said, at the very least, we need human blood. If it's the blood of a magical beast, the higher the better. Is dragon blood okay? Yes, Shi Lai Wenger was speechless. But thinking carefully, it was not strange that Chen Zhao could kill a few dragons. After all, in the Holy Kingdom, Chen Zhao had killed a terrifying dragon with one move. Chen Zhao placed the bucket of dragon blood before Shi Lai Wenger. It was a bucket. Apart from being a bit bigger, there was nothing strange about it. Is it enough? Yes. Shi Lai Wenger found a relatively large empty space and started making a seal. It was different from the magic formation in Chen Zhao's memory. Shi Lai Wenger's seal was to punch symbols into the ground. They were arranged neatly, completely different from a magic formation. This is your sealing spell. It's not magic. It's primitive language. What's the difference? Chen Zhao asked. Primitive language is the origin of Western supernatural civilization, Shi Lai Wenger said. Shi Lai Wenger said, for example, the gods of Olympus can be traced back to primitive writing. Oh. What's the relationship between the two? Primitive language involves some deeper mysteries, such as rules. Shi Lai Wenger did not hide anything. Or rather, he did not have the right to hide anything from Chen Zhao. Of course, with Chen Zhao's knowledge, he might not be able to understand no matter how much Shi Lai Wenger said. First of all, the primitive language is divided into 3 stages. The first stage is the beginner stage. This stage is the entry stage. What you come into contact with are some ordinary characters and symbols. As long as you have enough time, most people can learn it. Shi Lai Wenger continued, the difficulty is about the same as the most mainstream languages in the world. The second stage is the decipherment. I and a few people in this world who have mastered the primitive language are all at this stage. These learned characters begin to form new meanings through permutation and combination. This stage has already involved the supernatural level. Different permutations will also bring different effects. However, the permutation of some characters requires powerful magic to fuse. The third stage is the stage of transcendence and holiness. Although I haven't reached it yet, there are records of it in the ancient texts. Holy prophets mean that they possess extraordinary knowledge. Every divine prophet will create a unique rune that belongs only to them. Shi Lai Wenger glanced at Ares. The creator of the Olympian gods was a holy person. He created a mythical era. Chen Zhao was speechless. This thing could create an Olympian god. He looked at Shi Lai Wenger seriously. His gaze had changed. It was as if he was more important than Ares. The reason why Shi Lai Wenger said that was actually to bet on himself. Only by showing his value would he not be killed. It was helpless and realistic. His life was in Chen Zhao's hands now. His life depended on Chen Zhao's thought. If Chen Zhao thought that he was useless, then he should prepare for his death. Even now, Xilai Wenger was still scared when he faced Chen Zhao. Chapter 2846. Tell me more about the Divine Prophet. Chen Zhao was truly shocked. His combat ability was unparalleled right now. However, it was basically impossible for him to create a race of gods. But Xilai Wenger said that the creator of Olympus was actually a divine prophet who had mastered the third stage of primitive writing. If it was just power, Chen Zhao wouldn't care. If he used his full power, he could commit crimes against humanity in a matter of minutes. But he didn't have the right to say anything about creation. As I said before, every character has a special meaning. When you reach the third stage, you will be able to create a character that belongs to you. This character is not made public, and only the owner knows about it. Mastering this character is equivalent to mastering a rule. With that, Xilai Wenger typed out a rune. It started burning before Chen Zhao. This rune represents fire. For example, if the divine prophet mastered the fire rune, he can control all the flames in the world. Even the enemy's flames can't hurt the divine prophet. So, it's a problem of authority, right? It's like a computer. I'm the owner and I have the highest authority. If others want to play with the computer, they can only have the lowest authority. Something like that, Xilai Wenger said. Xilai Wenger said, theocracy is actually this kind of high-level authority, while ordinary cultivators have ordinary authority. Putting aside the difference in personal cultivation levels, in a confrontation of the same attribute, whoever has the theocracy will have the initiative. But the divine prophet should only master one rune, right? It's just a rule. But there are hundreds of gods in Olympus. Most of them have their own authority. This doesn't seem to fit with what you said. I'm not a divine prophet. I don't know either. Xilai Wenger was helpless. If he was a divine prophet, he wouldn't waste time talking to you. He might not be able to beat you, but he should be able to exchange a few blows. Xilai Wenger hurriedly set up the seal. When the sky was slightly bright, Xilai Wenger finally finished setting up the seal. Chen Zhao kept asking questions on the side. He couldn't help anyway. As for whether he would disturb Xilai Wenger, that wasn't within Chen Zhao's consideration. Anyway, Xilai Wenger didn't complain. In fact, Xilai Wenger answered Chen Zhao's question while setting up the seal. It still brought him quite a bit of trouble. But what could he do? He could overcome his troubles, but he couldn't overcome his past. Therefore, he could only overcome his troubles. This primitive language must be very difficult to learn, right? I've said it before. The first stage isn't difficult, and it doesn't require a very high talent in languages. A normal person can basically master it in a few months, but the second stage is a problem that needs to be considered. Do you think I have the talent? Who knows if you have the talent or not? Talent was not something that could be identified with the naked eye. Of course, he couldn't answer like that in front of Chen Zhao. Especially when Chen Zhao put on a fake smile. Xilai Wenger suspected that if he gave a negative answer, he would not be able to accept it. Would Chen Zhao let him experience hemiplegia first? I can sort out the primitive language, but how much Mr. Chen can learn is not something I can predict. Forget it. Let's not talk about this for now. What else did you discover when you looked at the primitive text I copied? Actually, what I said before is almost close to the truth. Almost? That means you're still holding back, right? Xilai Wenger glanced at Chen Zhao. There are many characters on it that I've never seen before. Some are very advanced. The primitive language formed by those characters will be very terrifying, so I suspect that what you have is a divine artifact. This is also why I want to get it. Divine artifact. Chen Zhao wasn't surprised by this answer. After all, that thing was a gift from old Zhang. It was a reward for him. Regular artifacts were not useful to Chen Zhao. It was understandable that Zhang wanted to give him a divine artifact. However, Chen Zhao guessed that even Zhang didn't know how to use the round plate and spearhead. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given them to Chen Zhao. Anyway, Chen Zhao thought that he had a good grasp of Zhang Tiany's personality. If the old man could really use them, if they were really useful, he definitely wouldn't give them to Chen Zhao. Only the round plate and spearhead seemed of unknown origin, but they were vaguely elegant. In reality, they were just decorations that had no use at all. Also, your divine artifact should still be incomplete, Shi Lai Wenger said. You can see that too. If my guess is correct, that divine artifact should have 5 parts in total. That's all I can guess now. If I can see the original, I might be able to give more information. Shi Lai Wenger seemed indifferent, but in reality, he still wanted to see the original. The primitive language had been passed down until now and was already incomplete. Therefore, even as a professional in the field of primitive language, he didn't have a complete understanding of it. As a result, it was very difficult for a third-stage saint to appear in their field. If he could touch the divine artifact in Chen Zhao's hands, he might be able to give him more inspiration and fill in the missing parts of the primitive language. Chen Zhao didn't answer Shi Lai Wenger immediately. Shi Lai Wenger wasn't a good person. Who knew what he was thinking? At 9 in the morning, Shi Lai Wenger still hadn't finished sealing it. Just then, Chen Zhao's phone rang. It was Felwood Scott on the phone. Hey, Mr. Chen, I asked the Coastal Warning Center and the Earthquake Bureau. I don't think there were any deep-sea earthquakes or tsunamis last night. Did you receive some wrong information? Felwood Scott didn't care if Chen Zhao had really received wrong information. He actually wanted to ask if Chen Zhao was done and if the construction team could go back to work. Oh. No earthquakes or tsunamis. I'll ask. Chen Zhao couldn't drag it out anymore. It seemed that he could only create man-made earthquakes and tsunamis. Chen Zhao flew into the air and took out the Black Trident. With his current strength and the Black Trident, it wasn't a problem to create a tsunami. Of course, it wasn't a catastrophic tsunami or a small-scale one. It was mainly used to scare people. Soon, Chen Zhao created a tsunami close to 10 meters high near Mystical Island and rushed toward the LA coastline. At this scale, it wouldn't cause much damage. At most, it looked scary. It could temporarily stop the ships from coming out. Chapter 2847. Chen Zhao's control of his strength was quite good. It wouldn't cause damage, but it was still dangerous. As expected, in less than 10 minutes. Felwood Scott called again. He was also very confused about this tsunami. It was too much of a coincidence. Of course, he didn't make too many guesses. He just thought it was a coincidence. How much longer? Chen Zhao asked. Soon, Shi Lai Wendy answered. He also wanted to be fast, but he wasn't sealing a person or a magical beast now. This was a god, a true god. The difficulty of this seal was far beyond that of other sealing targets. Even if it was only for 3 days. Shi Lai Wendy had to use all his knowledge in these 3 days. Moreover, he was only good at sealing. At the moment, hundreds of bright red runes had been carved on the ground. Shi Lai Wendy had imprinted these runes with magic. Shi Lai Wendy had expended a lot for these primitive runes. But he had to finish the last part. Otherwise, Chen Zhao would kill him. Mr. Chen, put this god on the ground. Shilai Wendy still maintained an appropriate amount of respect for Ares. No matter what, Ares was still a god. This was a human's respect for a god. Chen Zhao clearly didn't have much respect for this loser. He casually tossed Ares onto the ground. Ares snorted softly. He'd already regained consciousness. But he didn't communicate with Chen Zhao at all. He didn't beg or threaten. Losing was an unforgivable crime for him. He'd always existed as a victor. He was the god of war, the beacon of victory. But now, he'd lost. To him, this was undoubtedly the greatest irony. He'd once been able to give victory to war. But now, the god of war couldn't obtain the final victory. He waited calmly and accepted his fate. Of course, he also knew that resistance was useless. Shilai Wendy's expression became extremely serious. Under his control, the runes on the ground began to wrap around Ares like a piece of cloth. Every rune wrapped around Ares's body brought him unspeakable pain. His divine power was being stripped away. Ares tried to resist this power. But he was too weak now. His divine power had already been stolen. Then, Chen Zhao beat him up. He had never been so weak before. Even when he was asleep. Expressionlessly, Chen Zhao stood before Ares. Were you the one who instigated the gang riots in Los Angeles recently? Ares looked at Chen Zhao. There was confusion in his eyes, but also a flash of realization. I know where your troubles come from, but as an enemy, I will not tell you the truth. All right, I'll remember what you said. I'll add a biopsy project to your research project. Ares silently closed his eyes. The primitive words were seeping into his body. Soon, Ares's entire body was covered in red runes. Chen Zhao glanced at Ares, who was completely naked. The seal is complete, Shilai Wendy said. It's done. That's it. Wasn't he supposed to be sent somewhere out of sight? For example, a different dimension. I can't do it. My seal can only seal his power, and only for 3 days. Shilai Wendy looked at Chen Zhao helplessly. If he was given sufficient preparation, it was actually possible. But the preparation time was far more than 3 days. Chen Zhao's face twitched. How was this different from not being sealed? Chen Zhao's headache had been not knowing what to do with Ares. Instead of worrying about Ares's power. Whether he was sealed or not, Chen Zhao couldn't bring him to the supernatural organization's headquarters or home. This was the biggest problem. It wasn't power, but Ares himself. Shilai Wendy's seal didn't alleviate this problem. Instead, it made it even more troublesome. Right now, Ares's entire body was covered in red runes. Anyone who saw him would know that he was in trouble. Chen Zhao didn't dare to let Ares leave his sight at all. I don't want this kind of seal. I thought you understood. Shilai Wendy looked at Chen Zhao. Just then, Chen Zhao's phone rang. Chen Zhao, where are you now? Bifla's voice came from the phone. Chen Zhao couldn't help but smile. You're in Los Angeles. Yes, I just got off the plane, Bifla said. Bifla said, I felt a force on the surface of the sea. It seemed to be coming from you. Did you fight with Ares on the sea? I'm on Mystical Island now. Where are you? I'll go find you. I told you, I just got off the plane. Okay, where should we meet? You're a local. You're asking me where to meet. Forget it. Wait for me at a farm in the suburbs to the west. It's in ruins. You should be able to recognize it easily. Chen Zhao mentioned Ares and Shilai Wendy. Shilai Wendy really wanted to tell Chen Zhao. He didn't like flying, especially being carried. And being carried by Qinzhao. Resisting the wind pressure from high speed was even more tiring than fighting an evenly matched opponent. But he clearly didn't have a choice. When Qinzhao returned to Shilai Wendy's farm, Bifla had already arrived first. Bifla glanced at Shilai Wendy and Ares, who Qinzhao was carrying. Which one of them is the god of war, Ares? With your eyesight, can't you tell? Qinzhao was rather proud. He had recognized Ares' background at first glance. Bifla actually didn't recognize him. Bifla shook his head. Their powers are very strange. He seems to have been sealed by him, but his power isn't at the level I think a god should be. Just then, Ares lifted his head and glanced at Bifla. Human, what level do you think a god should be? How can you set standards for a god? Bifla looked at Ares. Obviously, Ares had admitted his identity on his own. Bifla shrugged. I feel that I have already reached the standard of a god, so I believe that I can be a god. As a standard, I believe that everyone below me is a mortal, and everyone above me is a god. Qinzhao tossed Ares before Bifla. I'll leave him to you. I don't want to watch him. Before old Zhang and 23rd arrive, you have absolute control over him. Chapter 28-48. What rune is this? Which faction is it from? Bifla clearly didn't know the primitive language. Qinzhao glanced at Shilai Wenger. His masterpiece. He gave it to you too. Is he your trophy too? Old Zhang gave me 2 things last time. I asked him to appraise them, but he wanted them. Hearing Qinzhao's words, Bifla couldn't help but look at Shilai Wenger playfully. After a long while, he said, your courage is commendable. You even dare to touch something that Celestial Master Zhang gave you. Shilai Wenger's expression was ashen. He was still a distance away from the top. At least, he couldn't do what Qinzhao and Zhang Tianyi had done and return the divine artifact. Qinzhao left after giving his instructions. He threw Ares and Shilai Wenger to Bifla. With Bifla present, he didn't need to worry at all. Bifla might not be as strong as Qinzhao. But his knowledge, his wisdom. Even 100 Qinzhaos couldn't compare to him. Maybe Ares and Shilai Wenger would do something under Qinzhao's nose. But they definitely couldn't do that in front of Bifla. As for whether Bifla would be able to come up with something, Qinzhao knew that Bifla wouldn't hide anything. The reason why the few of them could get together was because they understood each other's temperaments better. Even though they belonged to different forces, they were still the same. But they all pursued higher realms. This wouldn't change. Therefore, sharing knowledge would bring more feedback. The leader among them would also be able to show them the way. Take Qinzhao for example. He was the leader now. Every step he took was difficult and obscure. Every step was like a blind man groping an elephant. Every step Qinzhao gave them was a guiding light. On the other hand, if everyone kept their knowledge to themselves, then the strong would get stronger and the weak would get weaker. In the end, they would distance themselves. This was a choice that would benefit both parties if they worked together, but it would be detrimental if they were divided. If everyone had the thought that he might be stronger than them, and it would be troublesome if they became enemies in the future, then they wouldn't be able to work together. All 4 of them had an unspoken rule. They didn't need to tell each other their core secrets. But on the path of cultivation, any enlightenment and feeling had to be shared. In the past 2 days, they had been preparing to move. He moved from Mirror Lake Manor to Mingyue Villa. Of course, there was nothing much to move. He didn't plan to move any furniture. They were mainly transporting summer clothes. As for daily necessities, he could prepare another set. The main thing was to send a few underlings over to clean up the place. When the inferior demons were almost ready, the whole family could move in with their bags. Zhang Tianyi and the 23rd generation arrived the day after Qin Zhao notified them. With the addition of Bifla and the other two, they had already become dead otakus. They hid in the lab Qin Zhao had prepared for them all day. The lab was the underground base of a mysterious organization that Qin Zhao had destroyed before. However, that mysterious organization had vanished without a trace long ago. The underground base had been empty for a year or two. Now, it was time to make use of the waste. That place was well hidden enough, and there were no disturbances. Qin Zhao, on the other hand, spent his days outside. If there were any discoveries, just wait for me to inform you. Moreover, Qin Zhao had things to do. The second episode of Lost Civilization was broadcasted. The secrets on Gongdu Island gradually surfaced. At the same time, all kinds of strange things began to happen. This episode caused quite a commotion when it was broadcasted. The ratings also set a record for SC broadcast television. At its peak, more than 6 million people watched. If it was on a national TV station, this number naturally wouldn't be a record. But SC broadcast television only had coverage in California. The total population was only around 40 million. 6 million viewers meant that 1/7 of California's population had watched the show. Earthquakes, tsunamis, startled birds, ring clouds, giant python, mysterious trident. They all became the center of attention. Especially the mysterious trident. It also caused heated discussions among the public. For most people, the trident was the trident of Poseidon. The show never said that the ancient Greek civilization had appeared on Gongdu Island. The show never said that the ancient Greek civilization had appeared on Gongdu Island. However, from the traces in some ruins, it could be seen that it wasn't an ancient American civilization. After all, the difference in style was too obvious. Then, all kinds of mysterious things happened one after another. Lane Vilast's performance in the show was extremely eye-catching. After editing, she was portrayed as a female warrior who didn't fear danger. She was like Lara in Tomb Raider. He was knowledgeable and had extraordinary skills. Most of the time, she was eloquent. She could deal with danger calmly. When she was in front of the pond with the mysterious trident, she was also the first to rush up. She didn't retreat when she faced the threat of the giant python. It was also when the mysterious trident appeared that the show reached its climax. There was also the appearance of the mysterious black shadow. All of this showed how special the show was. It also made the show the biggest hit of the year. The governor of SC Corporation, Sheckley, called. He said that all 5 broadcasting companies in North America had contacted him. He hoped to get the broadcasting rights of Lost Civilization. The price was easy to negotiate. Also, their prices were all surprisingly high. It had already exceeded the production cost. This meant that Qin Zhao had originally thought that he would lose money. In the end, he didn't lose money. Instead, he made a lot of money. Although this money didn't mean much to Qin Zhao. As for whether he should broadcast it to other TV stations, Qin Zhao didn't care. He let Sheckley be in charge of contacting and discussing the price. Anyway, Qin Zhao had achieved his goal. In a high-rise apartment, 6 people were sitting in front of the television, watching the second episode of Lost Civilization on SC TV station. "Boss, is that trident the thing you're looking for?" Milo Tanzik Williams watched the show expressionlessly. His eyes flashed. No one knew what he was thinking. When the show ended, Milo Tanzik Williams said, "Go check the location of Gongdu Island." "Boss, that trident must be Poseidon's weapon, right? That must be what we're looking for." I don't know, but it's definitely not simple, Milo Tanzik Williams said in a low voice. Milo Tanzik Williams said in a deep voice, also, invite Miss Ryan Wylist from this show. Also, the director of this show should have a lot of content that hasn't been aired yet. Okay, I'll go now. Wait. If possible, bring the third episode of Lost Civilization too. Maybe we can find more information from it. Chapter 2849. Lane Vilast got up from the bed in a daze. But all of a sudden, Ryan Vilast saw a black figure sitting by the bed. Ah! Lane Vilast screamed in fear. The black shadow sat there calmly and spoke in a cold voice. If I were you, I wouldn't scream. Lane Vilast quickly calmed down and looked at the black shadow in front of her in shock. Who are you? What do you want? Lane Vilast sneakily reached under the pillow. Lane Vilast had a very bad habit. She liked to hide a gun under the pillow. This stemmed from the fact that she had almost been raped. Since then, she needed a gun to calm her emotions. Lane Vilast suddenly pulled out her gun and fired at the black shadow without hesitation. She had broken the fortress agreement and barged into someone else's house without permission. She deserved to be shot. Lane Vilast wasn't that kind of weak girl either. When she was filming a show in Colombia, they happened to meet a drug dealer and the film crew started a gun battle with the drug dealer. Lane Vilast had killed 2 people with her own hands. She was also a member of the Shooting Hobby Association. Every year, she would shoot more than 1,000 times. Bang! Just then, sparks splashed on the black shadow's face. Then the bullets bounced around the room. I don't like this. The black shadow stood up, sounding very dissatisfied. Lane Vilast was so scared that she trembled slightly. But she quickly came back to her senses. She flipped over on the bed, rolled to the side, and fired a few more shots at the black shadow. But no matter where the bullets hit, they only created sparks. Lane Vilast felt it too. No matter who the other party was, she and the gun in her hand definitely couldn't kill the other party. The black shadow grinned. Although the room was pitch black at the moment. But the white teeth were especially eye-catching. It seemed that even the night couldn't hide the white teeth. Then, Lane Vilast suddenly felt her body being bound. She had nothing on her, but she couldn't open her arms. An invisible force pulled her down. The fear of the unknown also made Lane Vilast's mind go blank. What was going on? Who was this person? Why did he attack me? Ryan Wylist was dragged out of the house and into a black MPV. After getting into the car, Ryan Wylist suddenly realized that Falui Lysander was also in the car. But in the next moment, she discovered that Falui Lysander had been captured just like her. Falui, this isn't your doing, is it? What kind of parody show is this? Ryan Vilast was still hoping for a fluke. Falui Lysander glanced at Ryan Vilast silently. He didn't say anything, and he didn't want to say anything. When he returned home, he found a stranger in his house. Then, thinking that he was skilled, he wanted to exchange a few moves with his opponent. In the end, he was pressed against the ground and rubbed against again and again. The last person to be dragged into the car still had injuries on his face. He really did not want to explain anything to Ryan Vilast. He even felt a little lucky when he saw Ryan Wylist. He was not the only one who was unlucky. Then the man who had dragged Ryan Wylist out got into the car and sat next to them in the back seat. Ryan Vilast saw it clearly as well. He was a Negro, not very tall, thin and small. He looked a little malnourished. Falui Lysander glanced at the black man. Ryan, you can't beat him. Ryan Velast almost laughed out of anger at Falui Lysander's words. He snorted coldly. Fight him if you dare. If you win, I'll be your mistress for 3 months. Falui Lysander glanced at the black man. He was a little eager. But the person sitting in the front seat had just made him physically and mentally exhausted not long ago. They didn't know where the two of them would be taken to. It couldn't be a good place. When they reached their destination, they were a little surprised. Originally, he thought that it would be some remote wilderness. They didn't expect it to be a high-end apartment building. They had thought about finding a chance to ask the security and butler for help. But when they entered the apartment building's lobby, they found that everyone in the lobby was wearing black suits. And everyone had sharp eyes and gun holsters at their waists. The people who caught the two of them swaggered in and didn't even bother to conceal themselves. Ryan Vilest and Phaler Lysander looked left and right. They hoped to distinguish the origin of these people from certain characteristics. But after glancing at a few people, they couldn't recognize them. Ding! The two of them were pushed into the elevator. But they suddenly realized that they weren't the only ones in the elevator. There was also an unbelievably tall giant standing in the elevator. The giant was at least 2.5 meters tall and his limbs were ridiculously thick. Falui Lysander looked at the giant in disbelief. Even though this elevator was wider and taller than normal elevators. But the giant still had to lower his head. Otherwise, his head would hit the ceiling. Ryan Velast furrowed his brows. Earlier, she had felt that these people might not be ordinary people. Now she was even more certain. She had never heard of humans who could look like this. Ding! The elevator reached the top floor. The giant pushed the two of them with one hand. When the two of them got out of the elevator, the giant followed them out. In front of them was a luxuriously decorated living room. In the middle of the living room, there was a main seat and 8 secondary seats. And in the entire living room, only the man sitting in the main seat was normal. The other 8 secondary seats were either empty or filled with people who didn't look normal. Sitting on the lowest seat was a person who was dripping wet. However, this person had a strange fish head. Opposite him was a woman with blue skin. Falui Lysander suspected that he had really been pranked. This might be a prank. It looked like a costume party. Ryan Velast's expression was solemn. This definitely wasn't a costume party. He might have entered a place where supernaturals gathered. Just then, the fish head spoke first. Falui Lysander, where is the island where you filmed Lost Civilization? Who are you? I don't like this kind of prank. If you don't stop, I'll sue you for illegal detention. I don't care who you are. Just then, Milo Tanzik Williams, who was sitting in the middle, stood up. Can the laws of humans control the gods? Chapter 2850. Falui Lysander looked at Milo Tanzik Williams, dumbfounded. It was the first time he faced such a situation and question. God. He never thought that one day someone would run up to him and ask him such a question. This man claimed to be a god. Was this the territory of some evil cult? Were these brainless cultists planning to make him a member? Falui Lysander's mind kept filling in the blanks. Falui Lysander clearly did not believe Milo Tanzik Williams's words. But at this moment, Falui Lysander's body floated uncontrollably. Milo Tanzik Williams gently raised his arm. Don't use your ignorance to question me. Falui Lysander immediately panicked. He did not understand, nor did he understand. Why was his body floating? In the next instant, an invisible pressure made his body tense up. Then came the pain. The bones in his body were crying out in pain. Then came the difficulty of breathing. He felt as if he was in a vacuum zone, unable to take in any air through his mouth or nose. In just a few seconds, he felt as if he had experienced a few centuries. Finally, all the restraints were gone. Falui Lysander fell to the ground, gasping for air. Shock and disbelief were written all over his face. He did not understand, nor could he understand what had happened. But he knew one thing. This must be a supernatural power. Lane Velast did not make a sound. She was also frightened. She had been wondering if the man in front of her was really as he said. A god. Very soon, Falui Lysander and Ryan Velast entered a state where they would not hide anything from each other. It did not matter if the other was a real god or not. They did not have any choice in the face of Milo Tanzik Williams. It didn't matter if it was because of the other party's identity or his martial prowess. They could only cooperate obediently. A day later, Falui Lysander and Lane Velast boarded the ship to Gongdu Island. Both of them were deeply worried, and the people around them didn't seem to be human beings. Of course, most of them maintained their human form. But a few were not in human form. Just looking at them was enough to make one's hair stand on end, and so was their food. "Hey, beauty, do you have time for a drink?" Ryan Wylist was enjoying the sea breeze at the bow when a man walked over. Ryan Velast looked at the man. He was handsome and stylish. He was tall, handsome, well-dressed, and very elegant. If he didn't have a long, thin tail, he would be a perfect male. Of course, compared to the other people on the ship, Ryan Velast was more willing to communicate with this man. "Don't be afraid, I don't eat people," the man said with a smile. His smile had the power to dissolve the fear in the heart. Ryan Velast relaxed a little. She didn't know why, but this man just made her feel at ease. "My name is Bader," said the man. "So you are a god too?" Hee hee. "There's only one god, and that's my boss, Mr. Miro." Bader laughed. "What about you guys? Believer? Servant? Or are they his creations? I was originally an ordinary person. He gave me power, and I obeyed him. So, is he really a god? In the eyes of ordinary people like you, existences that are stronger than you, existences that you can't understand, can be called gods. Since ancient times, the definition of a god has always been vague. For example, the supreme god of JD School is the only god. His definition is omnipotent, incomprehensible, and infinitely merciful. So, whether my boss is a god or not depends on which religion you use to define the concept of a god. What if it's the JD School standard? If that's the standard, then he's just a slightly stronger human. You don't seem to have much respect for your boss. Ryan Velast keenly noticed that Bader's tone was light, without the slightest respect for his boss. Bader laughed softly and didn't answer Ryan Velast's question. However, the look in his eyes already answered the question. "I thought he should be loyal to your team and serve your master wholeheartedly." Hee hee. Bader laughed. Ryan Velast was still a little wary of Balder, but Balder wasn't a match for him. But at least Bader didn't show any malice, nor was he dangerous. The two chatted a lot, and Ryan Velast also got a lot of information from Bader. Of course, maybe she didn't get the information, but Bader deliberately leaked it to her. Anyway, Ryan Velast could feel that Bader's attitude was very ambiguous. He didn't show much respect to his master. Ryan Velast also suspected that it might be Bader's facade. Maybe it was just a facade he deliberately showed to make him misunderstand. But what was the purpose of misleading him? Could it produce any benefits? At least, Ryan Velast couldn't think of any benefits he could bring to Bader. After a day and a night, Milo Tanzik Williams and his men arrived at Gongdu Island. Milo Tanzik Williams looked into the distance, his divine power sweeping across the entire island. As expected, he felt an unusual aura on the island. It was very subtle, but it couldn't hide from him. Over there. Milo Tanzik Williams pointed to the south side of the island. There was a familiar yet strange aura there. Bader stood at the back of the team. There was some doubt in his eyes. Bader looked at Milo Tanzik Williams. At this moment, Ryan Velast happened to look at him. After everyone landed, the team made some adjustments and continued forward. "Boss, I feel a huge aura ahead." "It's huge." Attila, the little giant in the team, said. Milo Tanzik Williams also felt it, and he sensed it more than the others. He also sensed it more comprehensively. The owner of this aura was powerful, but it was unfamiliar. Not long after, Falui Lysander and Ryan Velast found themselves in front of the pool. However, the stone platform was no longer in the pool. The surrounding plants were still knocked down into a circle. Milo Tanzik Williams stopped in his tracks. The powerful aura was here, but there was nothing here. At this moment, a majestic voice sounded. The voice was very loud, but it was hard to tell where it came from. "This is not a place you can set foot in. Leave. Otherwise, you will be punished." Chapter 28:51. The roar made everyone's hair stand on end. The sound was clearly nearby, but they couldn't see anyone. It was the same for Milo Tanzik Williams. The aura clearly felt very close to him. But he couldn't see anyone. So he couldn't help but wonder if the other party's concealment skills were especially high. Based on his concealment skills, the other party's strength might not be weak either. Milo Tanzik Williams stood where he was, maintaining his composure on the surface. In fact, he was panicking inside. Milo Tanzik Williams was ambitious, premeditated, and powerful. But he didn't have enough experience. Milo Tanzik Williams was originally a normal person. A gang that couldn't be any more normal. He had come into contact with the supernatural world for less than 2 years. In the past 3 years, he had fought less than 10 times. Most of the time, his subordinates could solve the problem. So, no matter how sacred and inviolable he seemed on the surface. In fact, he was still a mortal with extraordinary power. Although he had been studying this power for the past 2 years. But in terms of mentality, he hadn't really transformed. It was like a beggar who had obtained a huge fortune. But he didn't know how to use it. Maybe he could use simple things like eating, drinking, and playing. But he didn't know how to use this money to invest and gain greater returns. Of course, he couldn't say that he didn't know anything. At the very least, Milo Tanzik Williams was currently working hard to obtain greater power. His power came from Ares, the god of war. He had stolen Ares's divine power. He had power close to that of a god. This power was indeed extremely powerful. It was so powerful that he had a strange idea. That was to make himself a god. He had divine power, but he didn't have authority. So, while Milo Tanzik Williams was studying divine power, he was also studying how to obtain divine authority. Fortunately, he found a helper. An expert in the Olympian mythological system, Bader. After Milo Tanzik Williams showed his power, they hit it off. Bader also received a gift from Milo Tanzik Williams. Milo Tanzik Williams said that after he became a true god, he would think of a way to make Bader and his trusted followers become lower gods. Bader, on the other hand, expressed that he was willing to kneel down. With this method, Milo Tanzik Williams managed to win over a large group of like-minded subordinates. But in terms of actual combat experience, he might not even be as good as his subordinates. Therefore, when faced with some incomprehensible things, he was still panicking. Bang! After that, the stone mountain next to the pool shook. Gravel fell from the rocky mountain. It set off wave after wave of waves. Then, the silhouette of a huge creature gradually appeared in front of the Chinese. Everyone could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. As the stone mountain collapsed, the huge creature stood up from the bottom of the mountain. Dragon. It was a real dragon. The legendary giant dragon. That imposing figure, that powerful and suffocating aura, caused everyone to stagnate. Even Milo Tanzik Williams couldn't help but take 2 steps back. He had never thought that he would face a giant dragon. He had never met a dragon before. This was the first time in his life. Mortals, you have set foot on an inviolable holy land. The giant dragon looked down at the crowd. Both Faloui Lysander and Ryan Velast were scared silly. They were different from the others. The 2 of them were truly ordinary people. God, dragon, it had nothing to do with them. But they didn't just have to face God now. They also had to face the giant dragon. The 2 of them hid behind the rock. They were afraid that the giant dragon would see them. Ryan Velast's thought was that it was a pity that there were no cameras. If only they could record the scene in front of them. It might cause an even more shocking effect than Lost Civilization. At that moment, Ryan Wylist noticed that Balder was slowly retreating. His expression was different from the others. He was looking at the situation in front of him with surprise, confusion, and a meaningful smile. Ryan Velast looked at Milo Tanzik Williams. Milo Tanzik Williams also had a horrified expression. It made it seem like Bader should be the boss of the team. At least Bader was calmer than the others, even Milo Tanzik Williams. It's me. Milo Tanzik Williams, the descendant of Ares, the god of war, and the heir of the god of war. Milo Tanzik Williams said loudly, I'm here to look for the divine artifact of the Olympian gods that has been lost here. Now, I order you to step back, in the name of the god of war. The descendant of the god of war. The giant dragon still raised its proud head and looked down at Milo Tanzik Williams. I don't see how you look like a god of war. Milo Tanzik Williams raised his right arm and clenched his fist. A white light containing divine power bloomed from his fist. It was like the flash of a star. This power also gave Milo Tanzik Williams confidence and courage. With this divine power, what did he have to be afraid of? So what if he was facing a legendary giant dragon? Even if it was a giant dragon, it was only a mount or a pet of a god. I guess you are also a member of the Olympian race. I allow you to be my mount. Milo Tanzik Williams said confidently. Boom! The giant dragon suddenly slammed its claws on the ground. In an instant, a huge pit appeared in the ground, and cracks spread across the entire area. Mortal, you have a death wish. You don't know how to appreciate favors. Milo Tanzik Williams's raised arms suddenly opened and pressed down. In an instant, pillars of light fell from the sky. Warriors in golden armor walked out of the pillars of light. Giant dragon, I'll give you one last chance. Submit to me. Chapter 2852. It could be said that divine power gave him more than just confidence. It also gave him unimaginable knowledge. This kind of knowledge did not belong to Milo Tanzik Williams. Instead, it came from Ares, from the power he had stolen. Ever since Milo Tanzik Williams stole Ares's divine power had been stolen. He had also been conducting research on divine power. He had also developed many moves to use divine power. But no matter how much he studied, it was not as good as this moment of enlightenment. In any case, Milo Tanzik Williams felt that he had wasted more than 2 years of his life. He also felt that he had been so stupid in the past. Of course, he was suddenly receiving enlightenment from divine power. It was mainly because of the stimulation of the giant dragon in front of him. If not for the giant dragon in front of him, he was probably still immersed in the pleasure brought by divine power and could not extricate himself. He thought that the divine power he had mastered was all he had. Until now, when he received the infusion of divine power knowledge. Only now did he truly understand that this was how divine power was used. Although he had received enlightenment, he was still very young. But compared to him a moment ago, he was many times more brilliant. Ares's knowledge also allowed him to recognize the strength of the giant dragon in front of him. It was very powerful, but there was still a world of difference between him and himself. Then, he summoned the 12 sacred armors. His battle with the giant dragon began. Milo Tanzik Williams crossed his arms and watched the battle with a relaxed expression. At this moment, he was no longer as panicked and surprised as before. It was as if everything was under his control. The dragon slapped away a sacred armor divine weapon with a single slap. The sacred armor was almost deformed by the slap. But under the influence of divine power, all the damage was restored in an instant. Clang! A crisp sound rang out as the sacred armor divine weapon slashed at the dragon's neck. The giant dragon tilted its head slightly. A few dragon scales on its neck were cut off, and a little blood seeped out. Under the pain, the giant dragon immediately revealed a furious expression. The giant dragon opened its mouth with all its might and bit the sacred armor a few times. In the end, it bit it into scrap metal and spat it out. This time, the sacred armor did not recover. It seemed that the sacred armor was not completely indestructible. Roar! The giant dragon roared, "Arrogant fool, it will be your turn soon." Milo Tanzik Williams did not think much of it as he said lightly. "Do you think that by destroying a holy armor divine weapon, you have already defeated me? You don't understand how powerful the gods are." Milo Tanzik Williams raised his right arm again and waved it gently. More beams of light descended from the sky. The giant dragon slammed his claws on the ground again. A huge stone pillar rushed out of the ground in front of him and shot towards Milo Tanzik Williams. Just then, Milo Tanzik Williams stepped on the ground with his foot. Similarly, a huge stone pillar rushed out of the ground in front of Milo Tanzik Williams. The two stone pillars collided. They were evenly matched. But the giant dragon was no longer calm. How? How is this possible? This is God's authority. Do you see it? What you know, so do I. And I'm stronger than you. Miro Tanzik Williams stepped onto the ground again, only to see a huge stone palm appear beside the dragon and grab it. Now, tell me, are you willing to submit to me? The giant dragon felt uncomfortable being grabbed by the stone palm, but he grinned. Do you think you've won? Let me see what other tricks you have to turn the tables. There doesn't seem to be any. I know all your abilities, but none of them can get you out of this situation. The giant dragon stretched out his claws with difficulty and lifted a dragon scale on his lower jaw. Milo Tanzik Williams didn't understand the giant dragon's intentions. He didn't stop the giant dragon. He wanted to see what other tricks the giant dragon could play. Do you see this contract imprint? Chapter 28:53. Baldur's eyes were filled with bewilderment. A slave contract. This was not a beautiful magical contract. Be it humans or dragons, they didn't like being enslaved. This was especially true for powerful dragons. It was difficult to accept such a slave contract without being beaten. Moreover, the contract imprint exuded an abundant aura. This meant that the person who imposed the contract on him was still alive. Moreover, he was living very stably. This also meant that the owner of this contract was not only powerful. Moreover, he was young and vigorous, not the kind of old god that had lost his teeth. Balder searched his mind for candidates who met these conditions. However, he did not find anyone who met these conditions. It was very likely that the person who could beat a dragon and force it to sign a slave contract was a god. As far as he knew, none of the people he knew would do this. They usually acted like cowards and kept a low profile. It was unlikely that they would force a dragon to be their slave and servant. After all, an ordinary adult dragon was not a necessity for a god. Making them do housework. Apart from being able to make some achievements in demolishing houses, their other housework skills were just passable. Moreover, they were active by nature, which would always be accompanied by trouble. They were the opposite of keeping a low profile. As for transportation and the like, with their huge bodies, they were perfect targets for surface-to-air missiles. As for their battle prowess, to those who could enslave them, their battle prowess was not necessary. Those people might even prefer to enslave weak servant spirits instead of giant dragons. As for Milo Tanzik Williams and his pitiful subordinates, there was nothing they could do. They were basically in a state of confusion. There was no relevant content in Ares's knowledge. And the power he borrowed from the dragon also did not have relevant information. So he did not understand the purpose of the dragon showing this contract imprint at all. Could it be that this contract imprint represented some force? Do you want to use this imprint to scare away a god? Are you mistaken? Milo Tanzik Williams looked at the dragon disapprovingly. Boss, maybe we really should leave, Balder said. Why? Just because of that imprint. That imprint represents trouble, big trouble, Balder replied. At this time, the dragon said, I never thought of defeating you. What do you mean? Don't you think you're a god? Unfortunately, I think my master is also a deity, so a fight between the two of you should be very exciting. You have a master. Milo Tanzik Williams was very dissatisfied with this. A dragon could only have one master. That was him. Only he was qualified to do so. The giant dragon grinned. You'd better be careful. My master is very powerful. Don't try to fool me with this reason. No matter who your master is, I'll let him know that I'm not to be trifled with. Milo Tanzik Williams was still as arrogant as ever. Not only did divine power give him confidence, it also gave him arrogance. He seemed to think that just because he was stupid, he should look down on all living beings from above. At this moment, Bader turned to look at Ryan Velast. We better get out of here. Ryan Velast was startled when he suddenly heard the voice in his head. Finally, she focused her gaze on Bader. He asked with his eyes, Are you talking? We'd better hurry up. Why? Ryan Velast responded with his eyes. That dragon's master isn't someone that a dabbler like Milo can deal with. Ryan Velast still didn't understand. Wasn't the power that Milo Tanzik Williams displayed powerful enough? He still had overwhelming power when facing the giant dragon. The giant dragon was as powerless as a child before him. Ryan Velast felt that this was terrifying enough. But from what Bader said, it didn't seem to be enough. Such great power wasn't enough. Bader smiled bitterly. It was really troublesome to explain to ordinary people. The level that Milo Tanzik Williams had displayed was nowhere near that level. Bader carefully moved backward. Fortunately, everyone's attention was on the giant dragon at this moment. No one noticed Bader's actions. The giant dragon, or rather, Sabonis, was also very anxious. He had already stalled for so long, a full 10 minutes. Why wasn't his boss here yet? With his speed, he should have arrived long ago. The scene fell into silence. Milo Tanzik Williams didn't act immediately. He wanted to wait for Saboni's master to arrive. Then, he would defeat him with his own hands. To prove his strength. But the other party didn't seem to be here yet. Is your master afraid? Milo Tanzik Williams said disdainfully. That. Saboni's was a little embarrassed. Can I make a call? Obviously, this sentence was very inappropriate in this situation. However, what was even more unexpected was that Milo Tanzik Williams actually agreed to it. Hee. Of course, it's good to let you give up. Then. Saboni's took out a very old-fashioned phone, a brick brand. Before he transformed into a human, he could only use this kind of durable phone. But even so, making the call was still a difficult task for him. Without destroying the phone, successfully making the call was far more difficult than a fierce battle. Fortunately, he was fully focused and still completed the task of making the call. Hello, Saboni's. Boss, didn't you receive the message I sent you? The fish took the bait. The fish took the bait. The person you asked me to wait for is here. Why aren't you here yet? If you don't come, I'll be killed by him. Oh. I see. I'm playing games with my daughter. I'll go when she falls asleep. Hold on a little longer. I can't. He's too strong. No, Chen Zhao said nonchalantly. You lasted 3 minutes and didn't get killed. You can do it. I believe in you. Saboni's wailed. Just then, Milo Tanzik Williams walked up and picked up the phone from the ground. Coward, if you don't dare to come, your pet is mine. Coward. Kid, do you know what you're saying? On the other end of the phone, Chen Zhao laughed disdainfully. With the power you stole from Ares. Everything was just my plan, including your stealing of the divine power of Ares, the god of war. I arranged it. Otherwise, why would you think that you could steal the power of a god so easily? Bader said with a smile. There's only one possibility, and that is the help of another god. Milo Tanzik Williams was a little tense. He had thought that he had done it flawlessly. No one knew what he had done. But now, he felt like the whole world knew what he had done. On the other hand, he had been kept in the dark all along. Nonsense. You lied to me. I'm going to kill all of you. Golden light suddenly bloomed from Milo Tanzik Williams's body. Then, beams of light descended from the sky. Dozens, hundreds of holy armors walked out of the light beams. Scrap metal, Chen Zhao said calmly. In an instant, all the holy armors were squeezed and deformed by an invisible force. In the blink of an eye, they were squeezed into iron balls. In the end, they were kneaded into a ball by brute force. Clang! The iron ball was thrown in front of Milo Tanzik Williams. Milo Tanzik Williams's face turned green and red. Milo Tanzik Williams shouted. In an instant, his divine power swept across Chen Zhao's body. Then, a proud smile appeared on Milo Tanzik Williams's face again. Now, I know everything you know. What a wonderful power. Milo Tanzik Williams felt the power flowing through his body. It was too wonderful. The power of this man before him had reached such an unbelievable level. Chen Zhao had indeed felt the divine power sweep through his body. But he didn't seem to be hurt. What was he doing? Boss, he seems to be able to copy other people's powers. Oh, in other words, he copied me. I think so. Be careful, boss. Chen Zhao chuckled. When he looked at Milo Tanzik Williams, there was a hint of longing in his eyes. Come on, attack me with the power you stole from me. Let's see how well you use it. Milo Tanzik Williams looked at Chen Zhao. His eyes were filled with fury as he roared, "Die!" A huge palm descended from the sky, as if it was going to slap the entire island into the Pacific Ocean. This is your skill, and I can increase its power by 10 times. Die at the hands of your own pride. Even Milo Tanzik Williams found it unbelievable. This power even surpassed the divine power he had stolen from Ares. Chen Zhao looked at the huge palm formed by the power of the world. Chen Zhao rarely used this move, because it was just for show. It looked good, but it was useless. In a battle of the same level, the damage of this move was close to 0. It would be the same even if the power was increased by 10 times. Only when he attached the power of the world to his physical attack could he increase its power. Therefore, the power of the world was only suitable for buffs, not direct attacks. It was just like how the real function of gasoline was to start a machine, not to pour it on others. Just as Milo Tanzik Williams was feeling proud, he suddenly felt uncomfortable. Then, a strong feeling of weakness surged through his body. This caused him to kneel on the ground and gasp for breath. I just fought with Ares 2 days ago, Chen Zhao said softly. He didn't use this move even when I knocked him down. Do you know why? Milo Tanzik Williams raised his head unwillingly and looked at Chen Zhao. There was unwillingness and doubt in his eyes. Chapter 28:55. Your copy and paste ability is indeed good, Chen Zhao said with a shrug. But under normal circumstances, it's not that valuable. Why? Milo Tanzik Williams could not understand the reason behind it. Stupid, Bader said mockingly. Mr. Milo, copying other people's abilities doesn't mean you don't need to consume energy. You use the God of War authority to copy other people's abilities, but you still need to consume a huge amount of divine power. You'll never be more skilled than the user. I can instantly release 10 times more power than the user, Milo Tanzik Williams interrupted. That's not an advantage at all. This can't even be considered an advantage. The user always understands the power and consumption of their skills. They know what level of skill is most suitable for them. On the other hand, a thief like you actually thinks you can increase the power of your skills by 10 times. This is simply putting the cart before the horse. In a battle of the same level, you need to have your own skills. You need to use the skills you are most familiar with, not the opponent's. Your actions will only put you in a passive position. Bader's analysis was on point, just like how Ares knew this too. That was why he had never tried to copy Chen Zhao's skills. Moreover, although Milo Tanzik Williams had replicated his abilities, he was still able to do so. But he did not copy his bloodline and constitution. Could bloodline and constitution be copied? His skills were a set with bloodline and constitution. His skills were developed based on bloodline and constitution. Without a matching constitution and bloodline, how could he unleash the full power of his skills? Moreover, Milo Tanzik Williams could copy other people's abilities. But he could not directly understand what skills were useful and what weren't. For example, just now, if he had used Chen Zhao's primordial regression technique level 4, he might have been able to exchange a few blows with Chen Zhao. But he had actually chosen the completely useless force of nature. It was like throwing money at someone's face. It was indeed satisfying to watch. But no one could count on RMB to kill someone. And he had used 10 times the amount. In the end, before the huge palm formed by the force of nature slammed down, Milo Tanzik Williams could not take it anymore. He spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed to the ground. Chen Zhao still felt that this guy was here to be funny. The only one who could compete with him was Heartwarming Haber. He also had great power but did not know how to use it. Of course, relatively speaking, Heartwarming Haber was much better. Heartwarming Haber was just unskilled. On the other hand, Heartwarming Haber was a complete newbie. He really didn't understand anything at all. He just relied on his fists to smash people casually. In the end, he met someone with a bigger fist than him, and he was directly crippled. It was like Chen Zhao risking his life in the stock market with all his money. She could make Chen Zhao jump into the Pacific Ocean naked in minutes. Protect the boss. Milo Tanzek Williams still had a few loyal subordinates. Seeing that Milo Williams was lying on the ground, he immediately stood in front of Chen Zhao. Pa. Chen Zhao glared at them and they all exploded. Who else wants to exchange a few moves with me? Come out at once. I'll send you back to your hometown. The scene was silent. Both Falui Lysander and Ryan Velast were dumbfounded. They had thought that Milo Tanzek Williams was terrifying enough. Only now did they realize that the truly terrifying guy had been lurking around them all along. As for Milo Tanzek Williams' remaining subordinates, they really did not have the courage to fight Chen Zhao head-on, not even from the side. In fact, apart from a few, they were the core members of the English gang. Most of them had joined later on. Thus, they were not really loyal to Milo Tanzek Williams. Most of them worked together based on benefits. That was why they were willing to give up their lives to fight Chen Zhao. Forget it. This guy doesn't look like a good person. He's not like those superheroes in movies who don't kill. Chen Zhao clapped his hands and turned to look at Bader. Okay, the clowns are dealt with. Now it's our turn. I really want to see how powerful a god at his peak is. Bader looked at Chen Zhao helplessly. He did not want to fight. He really did not want to. This guy was even more dangerous than Ares. He was an existence that specialized in killing. Bader had used his divine power to check Chen Zhao. In the end, he saw a hair-raising scene. Although he could not see everything, it was enough to make him go crazy. If he had the authority of war or battle, he might be able to exchange a few blows with Chen Zhao. But his authority had nothing to do with war. He had a high status in the divine realm and was not weak either. But his power depended on who he was fighting against. Sir, I think you should stop wasting your energy. I'm almost immortal. You can't kill me and I can't beat you, so our battle is destined to be fruitless. I've never believed in immortality. As a god, you should also understand that there is no true immortality in this world. Even gods can die. Of course, I completely agree with your point of view. That's why I'm only saying that I'm almost immortal. Even if you throw me into the sun and roast me, you can't kill me. My immortality is related to my background. I still want to try. This place is only a few hundred kilometers inland. If we fight here, it'll have a huge impact. I'll be in trouble, and so will you. Chen Zhao suddenly missed Ares' divine kingdom. With a single thought, he could transport people into the divine kingdom. No matter how they fought in the divine kingdom, it would not affect the real world. Bader raised an eyebrow. He could feel Chen Zhao's aura growing stronger. The speed made his scalp go numb. Chen Zhao did not release his aura on purpose. But the others already found it difficult to breathe. Chen Zhao had already activated the fourth tier of the primordial regression technique. He stared at Bader with burning eyes. I still want to try. Bader shrugged helplessly. Fine, attack me with all your strength. If you can't kill me, our battle will end here. How about that? Okay, I'll do my best. Chen Zhao silently accumulated his power. The surrounding air currents also started gathering rapidly toward Chen Zhao's fist. Chen Zhao planned to blast Bader into pieces with one blow. Chen Zhao wanted to see if Bader could really not die. If Bader could really take a full power attack and not die, Chen Zhao would have nothing to say. Chapter 2856. Chen Zhao's right fist had turned pitch black. This was because Chen Zhao's right fist had attracted air to it. When any color was darkened to the extreme, it would turn black. Chen Zhao suddenly took a step forward and punched at Bader. Boom! In an instant, with Balder as the starting point. Behind Balder, half of the island had disappeared. The terrifying shockwave lifted the seawater dozens of meters high and kept pushing forward. They had been in the center of Gondo Island. But the next moment, there was only a cliff before them. There was also a huge swamp. The seawater had been scattered by the attack, leaving only a muddy basin. A few minutes later, the seawater finally flowed back into the swamp. The place was silent. Milo Tanzik Williams' eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. He suddenly realized how stupid and ignorant he had been. Falui Lysander and Ryan Velast couldn't calm down for a long time. One attack to turn half the island into ashes. This was true annihilation in the truest sense. Was this something a human could do? Falui Lysander started to understand. Why had Chen Zhao's attitude been so strange? He even thought about why Chen Zhao had invested in the Lost Civilization. And when the first episode of the Lost Civilization had aired, why had Chen Zhao been so angry? Chen Zhao was the one behind all of this. As for Milo Tanzik Williams' subordinates, they had almost exploded on the spot. Fuck. They had almost fought such a dangerous person head-on. Right now, they were only at the level of smashing rocks on their chests. If they had to fight a demon king who could vaporize half the island with one punch, they might as well find a corner to bury themselves. Sabonis was speechless. He really doubted how he had withstood Chen Zhao's 5-minute beating back then. As for Balder, he had completely vanished from the world. Chen Zhao was very sure that Balder's aura had completely disappeared. Chen Zhao was somewhat disappointed and even regretful. He was a real god after all. In the end, he had been too careless. Balder's aura and power weren't below Ares at all. Chen Zhao had thought that Balder would at least resist. He didn't think that he wouldn't resist at all. What did it feel like to be hit by a force of tens of billions of tons? Basically, it was a disintegration of molecular structure. Chen Zhao didn't believe that Balder could be revived. And then, Chen Zhao believed it. Countless specks of light appeared in the surroundings. The specks of light were converging in one place. Chen Zhao's eyes almost popped out. Could this guy really reassemble his molecular structure? Does this guy really have an immortal body? In less than 10 seconds, Balder stood before Chen Zhao, completely unharmed. Damn it, he didn't even change his clothes. Smiling, Bader shrugged. Sir, look. You can't kill me. Go, go. Chen Zhao was helpless. However, Bader was not going to leave yet. Chen Zhao looked at Bader. Why aren't you leaving? Do you plan to continue exchanging a few blows with me? Do you think I can't kill you? Or do you want to see if I can find your weakness? No, I just want to give you some information. What message? Don't you want to know what Mr. Miro is going to do? He's in my hands. Do I need you to meddle? Fine, since you don't need me, I'll leave. Don't, I'm just joking. You just don't know humor. Chen Zhao chuckled. By the way, which deity are you? How about I ask Mr. Falui Lysander and the beautiful Ms. Ryan Willis to answer for me? I think they've already guessed my identity. Can I really say it? Ryan Willis asked. She was now sure that Bader was really a deity. She didn't want to offend a real deity. Of course, there's nothing to hide. He's the god of light, Bader, Ryan Willis said. Asgard in Norse mythology. He's the son of Frigg and Odin. He's blessed by everything in the world and is immune to all damage. Only mistletoe isn't blessed. Only mistletoe can kill him. Chen Zhao looked Bader up and down and couldn't help but exclaim. Norse mythology was as famous as Olympus mythology. It was also a popular theme for movies and TV series. However, Chen Zhao's understanding of Norse mythology was limited to Odin, Thor, and Loki. His understanding of Norse mythology had all come from a certain sorority movie. As for Bader, Chen Zhao really didn't know much about him. So, the mistletoe can kill you? Chen Zhao asked, confused. Yes, but it's not a normal mistletoe. Bader didn't avoid the topic. It's the mistletoe of nothingness. Only special weapons made from it can hurt and kill me. Chen Zhao was silent. He didn't have the mistletoe of nothingness. Even if he did, it probably wouldn't be effective against Bader. Bader could tell Chen Zhao his weakness so calmly. It probably wouldn't be as simple as turning the mistletoe of nothingness into a weapon. There should be many deities like you in the world, right? Bader thought for a moment and answered, not many, less than 5. But in the next 100 years, more deities will awaken. Why? Don't you know? The spiritual power tide era is coming, and this time, it'll be a big one. In return for letting you go, shouldn't you provide some information about sleeping deities? Bader sneered. Let him go. You're the one who can't do anything to me, okay? No comment. I don't want to start a war between deities. That was the rule of deities. Unless the other party was a loner, and very weak at that. Otherwise, especially if the other party was a member of a divine race. Then he would try his best to avoid conflict. Being able to develop into a divine race meant that the divine race was definitely not weak. So, if it developed into a war between deities, the consequences would be unimaginable. As a member of the Asgard divine race, Bader had faced a war between deities before. The legendary Dusk of the Gods had actually happened. Chen Zhao didn't expect Bader to speak. After all, he really didn't have the ability to threaten him. If he couldn't kill Bader, Bader naturally wouldn't be threatened. He has the potential to become a god. You can use him as a research subject. With that, Bader's body started disintegrating, just like how he'd reassembled earlier. Chen Zhao looked at Milo Tanzik Williams. At the moment, Milo Tanzik Williams only felt his scalp go numb. He wanted to become a god, not a god to be researched. Bader added, not like that. After saying this, Bader disappeared irresponsibly. Then, Milo Tanzik Williams faced the terrifying Chen Zhao alone. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.